All right. Hello, everybody. How are you guys all doing on a beautiful, rainy, cloudy Saturday afternoon, at least here in the Netherlands? Yeah, I'm really excited to do this, so thanks for tuning in. A little bit of backstory was a year ago, I tried streaming for the first time, and I wanted to do it on Scala and Vim, and I botched it completely. I was wasn't prepared. I didn't understand how to do OBS at all, so I didn't use it, and I just shared my screen. My VM wouldn't work, so I didn't have a clean environment, and everything that could have went wrong, and it scarred me, and I didn't come back for a year. Then the last couple of weeks, it's been going pretty well. So I thought, you know what, full circle, we'll do the Scala in Vim presentation again a year later and see if it goes way better. And I'm hoping that it will go better. But yeah, so the plan today is to literally just go and do a deep dive into Scala and NeoVim. I say NeoVim, but at the same time, a lot of the stuff I'll be showing will be relatable to Vim as well. But I use NeoVim personally, and one of the plugins that Scala Meta has for metals is specifically for NeoVim. So that's another reason why we'll focus on NeoVim. And then you'll also see that some of the stuff that we'll go over will only work in NeoVim. It won't work in Vim the same way. So you'll notice that I have a slight preference for NeoVim, and maybe by the end of this you will too. But we'll see. But yeah, I plan on going through this pretty informally, so if you have questions at all, please ask them. If something doesn't make sense, just point it out to me in the chat, and we'll dive into it. I have no rush, so I have no plan to get this done in a certain amount of time, so I have no idea how long this will take. So we'll see. But the plan for today, as you can see here, and I actually put a link in the chat, which has a link to the slides. They're just markdown. Just a markdown file. So if you wanted some of the links that I'll show, I have a slide at the end that has all the links in there. So feel free to grab that and just click it and stuff. But without further ado, let's get started. So what's the plan for today? The plan for the day is to look at why do we even need special extensions for metals. It's a question we get pretty often of why can't I just use X and X plugin, which doesn't have a specific one. The second thing we'll look at is what are my options when it comes to coding in Scala and NeoVim. What plugins are there? What LSP clients exist? All that kind of stuff. We'll demo all the things, 99% of the things, and then we'll take an opinionated look at plugins. And I say that because I guarantee you when I'm done with this, somebody will be like, well, what about this plugin? It's so much better than that plugin. So highly opinionated. Main question theme for me, make it as clear as possible for the case of a clean setup of Scala, metals, and NeoVim. That help people like me that switch to NeoVim from Vim. Well, if you let me know that you will for sure try to switch to NeoVim to try this, I will do my best to make it clean. And everybody, this slide deck presentation is done with Look At Me, and your man TJDV in here is the one who kind of inspired this. So thank him for giving me the idea, because this is a pretty cool piece of software. So let's get started. The first question you might have is, why do you even need a special extension for metals? And I think this is a common misunderstanding that people have, especially metals users, and they sort of assume that every single thing metals is doing is just LSP, everything's baked into the spec. But that's not actually the case. There's quite a few things that we do in metals that isn't fully covered by the spec, or when metals was first created, the spec didn't cover it fully. So then we made an LSP extension, and then maybe it was added to the spec later, or there's something similar in the spec later, but it doesn't fully cover it. So if you look under LSP extensions here, you'll see a list of things that are very metal specific. So quick pick, input box, input bix, apparently I misspelled it, execute client command, status, did focus text document, publish decorations, and then the entire tree view protocol. All these things are extremely specific to metals. So if you were going to use or even something that so for example, coc-metals is a plugin for coc.neovim, and we'll get to what that even means in a little bit. But you could use metals with coc-neovim without a plugin. It's totally fine. It's the same with all the other LSP clients. The thing is that you won't have any of these handlers handled. Like if a request comes in for a quick pick or an input box, it just won't show up. And that's kind of a problem we started to have right away with other clients, is that if your entire process relies on something that isn't supported, it's not a very good onboarding process for that user. And Metals has like the very first thing that happens, like if you have used Metals before, is, you open a Scala project and the first thing you see is a pop-up that says, we determined you're in a Scala project. Do you want to import the build? And that little box is a quick pick. So, and that's a Metals specific thing. So if you don't have that handled, like you're not going to be able to like literally start the entire process, which is kind of a bummer. Actually, I'm totally wrong. That's a show message request. So some of even that isn't covered in all of the different clients, but that one is covered by the spec. But there's other things that will break with quick pick. And I'm trying to think off the top of my head, like what exactly quick pick is used, but you get the idea. There's a whole bunch of different things. Like here's one more. Like if you try to do create a new Scala file, you'll get a Metals input box. But if the client doesn't support Metals input box, then you can't use that feature. And there's a bunch of this kind of stuff. The second part that's really important for using a special Metals extension for NeoVim is that it offers integrations with other protocols. So this is like maybe questionable a little bit, because you could be saying like, well, shouldn't it be open enough that we can integrate whatever we want with Metals? And in some ways that's true, but in other ways it's a little bit tricky, because there's certain things that we require for the client to declare before it even starts, like right when the initialization process starts. And that's the way it works with debugging, for example. So like if you're going to say that you are a client that supports DAP, which is the debug adapter protocol, when you initialize, you need to declare that, or else we're not even going to give you the option to have certain things that you are going to need to debug your code. So if you don't have a plugin that is able to like set the correct initialization options, then handle those specific requests or ask Metals for that specific thing, it's going to be really hard to make these integrations work correctly. And that's why you'll see, I don't think there's any instances out there, but the two different times that you do see debugging working with Vim or NeoVim is if you're using coc-metals and VimSpecter, or if you're using NeoVim-metals and NeoVim DAP. And that's because both of them have like some special code that is for integrating with DAP. So you might be asking then, what are my options? And I'll give you two main options, and then we'll go into a bunch of other ones that are like outliers a little bit when it comes to Metals, and I'll explain why that is. So the first one is the coc.neovim ecosystem. It's probably the one you may be most familiar with or most aware of, primarily because that was like the first Vim/NeoVim extension that Scala made to handle Metals with Vim. And well, it was the first extension that was made, but before that we were just using like a different client that didn't have any specific Metals stuff to it. So coc.neovim is pretty wildly popular. In my opinion, before the built-in NeoVim LSP came to town, this was just like owning the ecosystem. Like that's probably opinionated and somebody will disagree with that, but they went from like 1,000 stars to like 15,000 stars in like not that long. So there's tons of people using it. It's solid, provides a ton of features. It covers like the entire range of the spec pretty much. Everything's built in, and there's a ton of plugins. So like if you were going to use, I don't know, if you were going to code Java, there's a coc Java. Like if you're going to do TypeScript, there's a coc TypeScript. If you're going to do Scala, there was a coc-metals that we created. And it was sort of like a plug and play thing where you could like download coc-neovim, download coc-metals, and go to town. Like everything was built in. Some like negative parts of that you'll hear about is that it sort of locks you into their ecosystem. Like if you're going to use coc-metals, you might as well use coc-json to get support for JSON completion in your config file. And then you're probably going to want coc-java because you may be jumping in some Java stuff. And then if you're going to do TypeScript, it makes sense to do coc types, like TSS server. So you realize that you're like really tied into this coc ecosystem. And then maybe you want a pairs plugin. So then you do coc pairs and all these other plugins. And before you realize that you're using like 20 different coc plugins, which isn't a bad thing necessarily, but you realize that you're like pretty bought into that ecosystem. the hackability is sort of not there. And what I mean by that is like, and it's kind of hard to like explain this before you see what it means in the built-in LSP. Thanks for the follow. I am no. But like if you want to like change the behavior of let's say like any handler, like you don't like the way the hover works, like it's sort of like tough luck. Like you can't really like change that unless you like have a plugin and you are doing like very specific things. And there's even things as like somebody who wrote a COC plugin that you can't override easily. Like you're just, that's it. Like if you don't like it, like, tough luck basically. The reliance on Node, that's also like something that a lot of people dislike, is that you have to have Node installed. It's an npm package that you're installing. Like, why do I have to rely on Node? Some people say the same thing about Lua. Like, why do I have to rely on Lua? Just kidding, it's a joke. Yeah, so like not everybody loves to rely on Node or doesn't even have Node. And if they're going to be coding in C or something and using coc-c, I think that's one of the plugins, they're going to have Node installed and it's going to have to be working. Okay, so that's like one large ecosystem, is the COC ecosystem. The second one I would say is the built-in LSP of NeoVim. And this will first land in the stable release when 0.50 comes out eventually. However, there's already a ton of plugins created for this. There's a vibrant ecosystem. There's a ton of hype. And most importantly, in my opinion, like everything is hackable. Some cons that you'll hear, it's a little bit harder to set up. It's not really like a drop and play. Like you still have to do 1 or 2 steps, which arguably like isn't that much more than what you need to do to get COC up and running anyways. It's still not in a stable release. 0.5 coming out in 2050 confirmed. Yes, like that's what everybody was hoping for, is the timeline. It doesn't yet cover the full spec. I will talk about this a little bit later, but like this hurts at least metals a little bit because there are some things that we rely on pretty heavily that aren't covered. Like code lenses is like one big one. I think it's actually probably the only big one that's not covered. So there's certain features that you can't get yet, and I'll talk about that a little bit. There's already a whole ecosystem of stuff running on the nightly header. Exactly. It's actually kind of ironic because like it used to be like, oh, look at this plugin, this is so cool, requires the nightly version, what? And now you look at like any .neovim plugin and it's like 0.50, you must be using this, and it's like 90% of the Lua plugins out there. So it's kind of hilarious. So that's a few of the cons that you'll hear about this. And I also don't want to like fully, actually, how do I show the bottom of this slide? A few of the other things, a few of the other options are Ale, Language Client NeoVim, NeoVim LSP, or Vim LSC. I actually used to use the Vim LSC before there was a Metals plugin. And again, I'll reiterate, like if you want to use Metals with any of these 4 and you're like already used to using these, you can totally do that. Just there will be certain features that either won't work because like they're metal specific extensions and they won't be covered, or they won't work because I'll give you one example. Like let's say you really want the metal status, which is like, in my opinion, a way better way to get status messages from metals. But you have to, during the initialization process, say what kind of log messages do you want? I want metal status messages. So if you can't easily set the initialization options, you're kind of like out of luck for those things as well. So those are other options. They do work. It just requires a little bit of effort on your part and a little bit more debugging to understand why something may not be working. Okay? What are my options, part 2? So we'll go into a little bit of like, let's say you're convinced that you want to use a plugin for metals, that's the best way to do it because you'll get the most support. Then you basically have 2 options. You have coc-metals, and these are a little bit like related to what we were talking about before, but there's some pros to this, right? It's pretty much complete. And it covers everything. Like pretty much everything on the Metals site that you'll look at in terms of features is covered by coc-metals. It has built-in support for the tree view protocol, which like was no small task. So if you want to like watch all your different packages and the percentage of compilation that's happening in each one of them, you can do that. If you want to explore all of your dependency sources and then jump to that part of that dependency, you can do that really easily. you don't really need other plugins to get a polished experience. Like you can plug and play. Like if you want like fuzzy searching over the commands, you got them. If you want references right away and like a nice searchable window, you have them. Like everything's built in basically. And it works with Vim and NeoVim. So if you are like not convinced on NeoVim and you don't want to switch, you can use coc-metals. There are some things that won't work, but you can still use it, and most of it will work. Some of the cons of using coc-metals, in my opinion, DApp support is weak. To be super honest, like the VimSpector integration is not super clean with coc-metals, primarily because I just never used it. So like I never improved it once it was like in there, and I just didn't love the workflow that it brought. So I just it was never given the love that I think it deserves. Realistically, I don't use it anymore. So they're sort of on a feature freeze moving forward, unless somebody else wants to like take it over and work on it. I was working on it like pretty consistently for a long time, and then once I moved to NeoVim-metals, there was really no reason for me to like continue to add new features to it, unless it was something that Metals was coming out with that was like pretty low-hanging fruit that I could just like easily put in there. But sort of expect moving forward, like I'm probably not going to work on coc-metals a lot because I don't use it, and it's really difficult for me to like spend a lot of time working on a plugin that I don't use. NeoVim-metals, which is the second option. Pros: the integration with NeoVim DApp is minimal and solid. I like it. It works really well. There's like very minimal interface that even needs to happen. Basically, it's like maybe 20-30 lines of Lua that like solidifies everything from starting it up to figuring out what port Metals is giving you to listen to, and then the rest of it is just like handed off to NeoVim DApp, and you would just use it exactly how the docs say, and it works really well. So that's great if you are looking for debugging in NeoVim. Everything is hackable. Like if you don't like the way I did something in there, like you can redo it. So you can rewrite the handlers the same way that I rewrote some of the default handlers. Like if you're unfamiliar with that means, we can dig into that a little bit later, but just like assume that if there's something that NeoVim-metals is doing that you don't like, it's not that hard to change. It's just simple. Like I was amazed at like how much more enjoyable writing NeoVim-metals was than doing coc-metals. The Lua ecosystem with NeoVim, if you're unfamiliar with it, is super easy to use. There's decent docs. There's people that are willing to answer questions. Yeah, help LSP handlers. Woo! So it's pretty great. Like it's simple. Like I feel I've already had people that like are unfamiliar with Lua and unfamiliar with Metals. They didn't like something. They were able to like look at NeoVim-metals and like send in a PR to change something because it was easy to understand. And I love that. Like that's like a win on my part. Lastly, I'm actively working on this. Like this is what I use every day for Scala development in my like professional work life. So it needs to work well. And if not, like I'll spend time working on it. So I think like having somebody actively working on something makes a huge difference. Some cons: there's no built-in TVP support. So that's the tree view protocol, which is again specific to Metals. Simply, I just haven't done it yet. So either somebody who wants it can definitely contribute it, or I'll eventually get to it and it'll be there. There's no code lenses yet. So there's certain parts of Metals that you may use and may be used to as coc-metals that you can't have yet, which is like jump to super methods, which is reliant on code lenses. Probably one of my favorite features of coc-metals is the analyze stack trace command, which allows you, and I'll show you, to like copy a stack trace and plop it into NeoVim, and just like boom, you get an extra file which has code lenses for every step of the stack trace that you could just jump to that part of your code base. It works super well, but we don't have that yet. It's actually something that like you could hack in the plugin itself, but if I was going to do that, I'd probably try to just like upstream that, but that's probably not a small task either. And there's already a PR, I think, to add code lenses in, which just isn't complete yet. And lastly, it's just not yet stable. And I know there's people that like just won't use something that's not in a stable release. So that's one of the other cons. Any questions so far up to this point? Like, does everything make sense before we like dive into all the things? Or else we will literally just get started, and I will show you coc-metals first. I'll show you how to start it up. I'll show you some settings. I'll show you my favorite features of it, and then we will switch gears and jump into NeoVim-metals, where we'll probably spend a little bit more time. Does that sound good? Cool. I don't hear anybody complaining. So let me set up. Honestly, it always depends on your preferences. I've been using metals for 2+ years and I've used TVP like 0 times. Only switched it on 3 to 5 times to see what it is. Yeah, that's fair. I feel like some people either like use it all the time or you're never going to use it pretty much. And I forgot to set something up. So give me 1 second because I need to do it on a different window because I don't want you to see it. It's secret. I feel like there's certain parts of the tree view protocol that people use that are really useful and other parts maybe not that useful. Like I really like it for if I'm in a file and let's say I'm trying to find out like where in my giant project this certain thing is defined, you can jump to that symbol in the dependency tree like immediately and it's really fast. Or the same thing if I'm exploring an external API and I'm in a file and I jumped to it, like you'll notice that sometimes navigation when you're in external sources isn't the easiest to explore, especially if it's a Java source. But you can actually, like, let's say you jump to Java time instant. You're in instant and you can do like a find in tree from instant and it will open where Java time instant is in the tree. And then you can look at like the entire API and that works for any external sources. All right. So I kind of cheated to set this up because I'll be super honest with you. I don't even have a NeoVim setup anymore for coc-metals because like once I made the switch to Lua, like I separated all of my NeoVim stuff from my Vim stuff. So I've had to like hack this together very minimally. But what we'll do is I will first show you a very small setup of this. And I just did something I shouldn't have done. So let me do this. All right, so what you're seeing is a pretty minimal vimRC. And this will be the like core part of what you'll need to get started with coc-metals, okay? So first, this is using Vim plugged if you're not familiar with it. We'll just install a few like quality of life things. This is like literally what I actually use for my vimRC, so this is real. Basically, the only ones that you'll have to pay attention to are maybe these right here. So vimspector, if you're going to want to do debugging, which we're not going to do probably, because again, I don't really like using it, and I don't think it's that polished and probably not that user-friendly, which is like not a great selling point for me to tell you probably. We'll need coc.neovim, and we're going to do branch release, okay? And that is what is going to get us started. So like, all of these you can pretty much ignore up here because these are just like color scheme, a couple other things. So let's focus on this one. So this is what is going to install coc, okay? All this other stuff is like probably not related. We have this, which I'll show you in a second, which is all of your coc mappings. And down here, there's a couple things that are relevant. One, if you start using coc, you'll notice that like the default error colors are just like blindingly stupid. They're just like neon red and neon yellow basically, and they don't match your color scheme and it drives me nuts. So I put these in here right away, these two specifically, which just allow that to be overwritten and match the color scheme. So you can link this to another highlighting group if you want. I literally just put in the colors. And then I have some status line stuff in here, which I'll explain in a little bit. The really relevant ones are these three right here, and I'll show you what they are in a bit. One of them shows me errors, one of them shows me warnings, and one of them shows me the metal status. There are built-in versions of these, but I prefer them done a little bit differently, so I have custom functions for these. But if you use pretty much like the majority of the plugins for pretty much any of the status lines, they'll have built-in integrations for coc stuff. The only one that won't be built in is the metal status, which we'll show you in a little bit. And other than that, there's really nothing else in here that would be relevant. So if you're going to get started for the very first time, you would include this, coc.neovim, okay? That's all you would like need to do in terms of plugins. Then you're going to need your mappings. And if you go to the coc-neovim homepage, let's actually just do that. Be the easiest thing, and I'll show you what I mean. So GitHub. You'll notice like right on the homepage, they'll have this explanation of like, if you're going to get started, copy all of this stuff, which is all of this. You can just copy this directly, but there are a few specific metals ones that aren't in here that you'll need. So what I do recommend is instead of copying that one, go to coc-metals, And in coc-metals, we have a coc-mappings.vim here that you can just take verbatim. Just slap it into your vimrc, or put it into another file and then source it from your vimrc. And this is what you'll be seeing more or less in the file behind you. Plus I added a couple functions, and I'll explain what those are. So let's skip over these 3 functions first, because these are the extra things that I added. And then we'll start down here. So from this point, like where we have no backup, all the way to this point where we have some select stuff, is what you saw on the COC NeoVim homepage. Like, it's just literally copied, pasted, boom, right here. The only things that are metal specific that I added are these guys down here. And this is commands that you're going to need to do the tree view related stuff, okay? Like, that's all that these extra things add. So up here, the things that we skipped over were a couple of specific things. One is getting the diagnostics only for that buffer, and only getting, I think, so errors and warnings. So altogether, and well, actually, sorry, this is a function that you can call and get whichever you want. So you can pass in error, you can pass in warning, and that's what you can use to get those. I also have another function that you can do the same thing for your entire workspace. So if you want all the errors or all of the warnings in your entire workspace, you can use this one. And this is just a very minimal status that you can use if you're going to like if you have a status line that you're like doing yourself and not using it from a plugin, you can do something like this and just say, hey, here's a function called coc minimal status, and you can include this in your status line, and then you'll see metal status. If you're using like a plugin that allows you to just sort of like define a function that will display something, then you could just use like global coc status here, and it will show that to you. And then minimal errors is like another, like, I don't even think I use all these anymore. Like, some of these were just like functions I was playing around to see like what I could all get to show. So if you're interested in these are my dot files too, to like take a peek at, but they're not necessary. They're just like, if you want some extra things, you could do that. So the main point is, from this point, this no backup, all the way down to the bottom, minus the tree view stuff, is just the default COC things that they tell you to copy. And these are going to be mappings for like, go to definition, find references, open up the command palette, that type of stuff. All right, so we are going to do this, which will prep everything for COC for me. And we will go to the Scala workspace, not metals though. And I have an alias here, which is just like an alias around getter8, if you're familiar with it. If I remember what it is. I think it's new SPT, yeah. Okay, so new SPT will create me a brand new SPT project. We'll call it stream example, all right? And we'll go into stream example, okay? So this is like a fresh, brand new Scala project. And you would just open this the same way that you would open pretty much everything else with COC, just V, whatever your file is, okay? So or Vim, or NeoVim rather, but I have like an alias to V, so that's why I'm doing V. You'll also see me doing this little U thing. It's because I'm like specifically pointing towards a very minimal file that is just changing my runtime path to grab what's in my vimrc, okay? So without any fancy theme or anything like that, this is what you're going to end up with. And the very first thing that you see is that it will prompt you to install, which I didn't think it was actually going to do that because I thought it was uninstalled, but we'll open this up again. Let's try this one more time. So we open this up. And normally at this point, nothing will happen because you actually don't have coc-metals installed yet, okay? The way that you get it installed, so like, let's pretend you didn't see this. Is it possible to disable the auto prompt? Are you referring to like the auto prompt that you just saw there, like import your build? Like, you don't want that at all? To load the project. No, not really. Well, actually, I shouldn't say that. Yes, you will get it the first time no matter what, right? Like, so like if you have a clean workspace here and like you don't have any like .metals directory, you don't have any .bloop directory, anything like that, when you open this up for the first time, no matter what, you're going to get prompted. But if you never want to again, you literally just have to do don't show again, and you're never going to get prompted anymore. So like this will make it go away. I think that should do what you want it to do. But I'm actually having some issues here because COC is not even being loaded up. So let's try to figure out what's going on. So what I'm doing here is I'm using simple, I believe, which is not what I want to be using. Okay. I think I know what I'm doing wrong. Okay. I'm using the wrong version. So let's, again, this is a fresh workspace, never been tried to open before. And I was using the wrong file because I don't want the simple Lua, that's the simple other one, but I want this coc-vim, okay? So let's take a look at what this is first too. So if we open coc-vim, actually, you don't even need to see what's in here because like I already mentioned, it was just, if I look at this coc-vim, it's literally just changing the runtime path, the pack path, and then sourcing your vimrc, okay? That's all it's doing. So what we looked at in your vimrc is what you're going to be seeing here. Let's jump back to the demo. So we're opening this up for the very first time. That would actually be a cool feature in general. If you've been using metals for more than a couple of days, I'd like to have an option to always manually import the build. You do have an option to always manually import it if you want. You can manually do it. But if you like turn it off and you say I never want to see this again, it will literally never show it to you again unless you reset that option, which I'll show you how to do. You can reset it as well, and you delete the like .metals directory. What's up, Warlock? It's good to see you here. So that's like two different ways that you can kind of play around with either never seeing it again, ignoring it, that sort of thing, okay? So we'll use the coc, I think it was coc.vim. It's never gonna show it to me for this project though, I mean in general. So you want it to like never show you for, like there's no way to turn it off for every project, everywhere by default. I mean, yeah, that'd be really difficult to do because like, if you think about it, like starting from a brand new fresh project, it would almost like have to be that you have some initialization option that you're telling metals to like never send that in. But oh, well, I'm telling you, it's probably not going to happen. Yeah, I'm trying to think like what would be the best way to do that because it literally comes from the server. So like you have two options. Either the client can hijack it when it comes in for the first time and never show it to you, which like could be a setting in NeoVim-metals, I guess, just like never show this. Or it would have to be like something in the server to like say the user never wants to see this, never send it in. I don't think the others, like I don't think anybody would go for it in the server side, so it'd have to be NeoVim-metals side. It's something we can play around with, but also like I want it to probably be like super hidden so that nobody else could probably use it. Instead of it automatically starting. Yeah, that's fair actually. coc-metals actually has this. I don't know, Santa Warchief, if you're a NeoVim-metals user or if you are a coc-metals. If you're a coc-metals user, I'll show you how to do this because you can do that. Maybe I should have said that earlier then, and that would also like solve your problem, Agile Steel. Is like you could just turn it off by default. No, you can demand this. Yeah, I'll show you this in a little bit. Could you destruct attach function? Yeah, so actually like related to that, there's something I've wanted to play around with a little bit with NeoVim-metals that would allow you to just like fully like you can restart the server. Actually, I'm like totally getting off topic. Let me show you this first. When we get to that, we can dive into it, and I'll show you a couple examples. So coc NeoVim, we'll use this and we'll open up build.spt, okay? So this is freshly installed. If you've never done it before at this point and you were just getting started with coc.neovim, you'd want to do a plug install. That will make sure it's installed. Like the install process is pretty simple for it. So at this point you have coc NeoVim installed, nothing else. Now you need coc-metals installed. The way, like there's multiple ways to do this. You could include it as a plug, just like you did with NeoVim-metals. And you could like see that if we go back to here and actually had it right here. So like if you wanted to include it this way, you could do that as well. And then when you install it, it installs both of them, all right? But let's say we didn't do that, because we didn't. You could also use the built-in functionality that COC has to do that. So you can do a COC install coc-metals. And this, what it's doing behind the scenes is it's literally grabbing the npm package, the latest installed one. It's downloading it, and it's running the command that is attached to it, which is like a yarn install, basically. So we'll wait for this to install. NeoVim-metals would already be installed, just saying. It's one more bonus. All right, so now coc-metals is installed, okay? So if we sit here for a little bit, if I remember correctly, yeah. What just happened behind the scenes was a couple things, okay? So NeoVim-metals or coc-metals was installed, right? But at this point, you don't necessarily have metals installed yet. So when you saw that it was being prepared to work, what it was actually doing was downloading everything it needs to run metals with some metals itself. Once it bootstraps all of that, it'll say metals is ready. Then it determines that metals is ready, starts metals. Metals determines that this is an SPT workspace, so then it prompts you, do you want to import this build? Okay, so we'll say yes, and we'll want to import this build. And there's a couple things you'll notice right away. So down at the bottom, you'll notice running SPT bloop install. If you've ever watched me on stream before or like looked at some of the other images, you'll notice that sometimes that message is right here in your status line, and you might be wondering like, why isn't that happening right now? And the reason for that is by default, we don't use metal status. And by default, we just, I think, use show message. And the reason for that is because like by default, this will show for every single user. But if you're not somebody who has like already did the step to make sure it's just going to show in your status line, you're not going to see it. And we don't want somebody starting and being like, oh, like I can't see any status messages. What's going on? Where this way it guarantees that you can see it. So what I like highly recommend very first, and before I show you, you'll notice it's also saying downloading Scala fix. Sometimes people will say like, why does it download Scala fix every single time? And it doesn't actually download Scala fix every single time. It will download it the first time, and then the consecutive times, it is just like preparing it. And right now, like the weird thing is it's sort of just stuck there because that was like the last message it told to show, which is another thing that I don't really love. And like if you use metal status, you won't see this. Those headphones look nice. Thanks. They're pretty great. I like them. They're the Philips 9500s, I believe. They're really great headphones. So let's say we don't want to see the show message anymore. We want like better messaging. We want that sweet metals status. You'll do coc config or coc local config if you want to do it for every single one. And first you'll notice that you see this little empty bracket, okay? There's a lot of different stuff that is in here, but before you do anything, I mentioned like once you're in the COC ecosystem, you're kind of like bought into the ecosystem, and then it pays to like use the other stuff in the ecosystem. And one of the other things in the ecosystem is the COC JSON extension. And if you use the COC JSON extension, you'll get auto completions in here, which is pretty nice. So you can just do metals, and now you see every single metals thing is in here. So if you're ever curious about like, what are all the options that metals has, you can literally just type in metals in your COC config, and you can get all the information here. So like, I want to set my Java home. I want to do the bloop version. You probably should never use this unless you like really know what you're doing and really specifically want a different bloop version, but you can do it if you want it. You guys were asking earlier, like, how do you like turn something off by default? You could use this actually. So metals enable is true by false. If you set this to false, for like your COC config, then throughout every project that you open that is a Scala project, it won't start by default. So like this might be what you're looking for. And I totally forgot about this because it was something that somebody asked for quite a long time ago. And I was like hesitant to put it in there, but then it like wasn't really hurting anything, so I just threw it in there, and like now it's maybe useful for you. Problem solved. That's all. That's what I like to hear. Stream worth it today, but only with COC. Yes, only with COC. But actually, like there might be a way to like, I don't know. Let me play around with it. We'll figure this out for NeoVim-metals as well. So let's get rid of this for now. Let's go back to this. I was talking about status. status bar enabled. In my opinion, this is one of the most important things in coc-metals that you should turn on. And there's even a little note here, like you need to ensure that if you're adding this, you have to add something like coc status in order to display it with your status line. So we're gonna say true, and we are going to then reload the window, jump back over here. And now you'll notice that when metal starts up, so let's go to like hello, I think. You'll see that you'll no longer be seeing this message in the down below. You'll start to see it in the status bar. So now you see importing build right here. And it's like much better, like progress support. It looks cooler. It's like way more accurate in my opinion. It's the way to go. So like make sure to turn that thing on. What are your settings to have bar for insert mode and block for normal? What do you mean? Like what you're seeing in here right now, or in my actual like NeoVim-metals one? Because like what I'm using for my status bar right now is literally nothing. Like I don't have any. I shouldn't say nothing. I have something set up. We can look at it a little bit later. So now metals is set up, right? So we have metal set up. We have metal status turned on. And now how do you get things to work? The cool thing is that things should pretty much work at this point. Like we installed coc.neovim, we installed coc-metals, we turned status bar on, and we had those mappings that we put on earlier. So you can literally do like a go to definition, and it works. You can do a like find references, which I'm forgetting all the mappings for coc because I barely ever use it anymore. You can do a hover, the hovers work. And okay, so like basic code navigation seems to be working, right? Like going to definitions working, finding references is working, all that jazz. So let's look at some of the other features that you might be interested in, right? So the first thing is, what about all these cool metals commands that we have? How do I find those? So by default, they are mapped to space C, which will open up this command palette here. And there's a bunch of stuff in here. And again, you can type in metals, and then you'll start to see there's a whole bunch of metal stuff in here. We have TVP stuff, which is tree view protocol. We have things to toggle your logs, import your build, scan your sources, start the Ammonite server, compile Cascade. We can create a new Scala file. We can create a new Scala project. We can analyze stack traces, all sorts of stuff. But let's go through a couple of them, right? Well, if there's anything that you like specifically want to know, but one of these, like what it does, how to use it, let me know. But I'll show you some of the most exciting ones in my opinion, okay? So let's say like the first thing that we are into is that we want to use BSP, or sorry, that we want to use SPT as a BSP server instead of Bloop. Okay, cool. We have this generate BSP config. I can select this. In the background, it's telling SPT to create a bsp.spt JSON file, which will have the BSP information that it needs to connect to it. And then after that's created, it will literally connect to SPT as your server, and you'll then be using SPT as your build server. Like we won't go super deep into this, but like why might you do that? It could be because you don't want to do two different compilations. Like if you use Bloop, which is the default in metals, which I personally use, if you then want to like use SPT to like do a publish local or something like that, you're gonna end up compiling your stuff twice, which you might not want to do. So you could just use this and it would work as well. This is taking a little bit longer than I thought. But what this is doing in the background is if you look here, now you see a .bsp directory. If you go into this .bsp directory and you look at this spt.json file, you'll just see the information of how to launch the SPT server. That's all it is. So now we're started, and now we are connected to Bloop, or sorry, to SPT as your server. If you want to switch back, how do you do that? You go back to your commands, you do a BSP switch, which is right here. And then it'll say, okay, you're currently using SPT. What do you want to use? Bloop, boom. So now you switch back and you're back. Simple as that. So some of the other cool features that you might not see if you're using Vim, because Vim doesn't have virtual text support, or if you are using NeoVim-metals as well, because it doesn't support it yet, is let's say we have a new file here. Well, this will work in the other one as well, but like we want to create a new file and we want to create a trait, okay? We want to call this trait foo, okay? So we have trait foo, and we're going to put an abstract a in here, which is an int. And we're going to have a class bar. extends foo, and you guessed it, in here we are going to have a equals 3, and we can even redo this again and have a car, and val a equals 4. And what I was going to show you is how do you jump to the super methods. And one thing you may be noticing is, well, what do you mean, Chris? You said there was going to be code lenses, which allows us to jump to the super method, which you don't see that yet because that also needs to be turned on. It's not turned on by default. So if we go to our COC config again, and we jump down here, not that, and we type in metals super method lenses enabled. Now we have that set to true. Jump back over here, refresh this. I think it should happen without even needing to restart. Maybe we need to restart. Whoops. Let's try this. Oops. I think we are in, what was it? No, foo.scala. So it'll take a second, it'll compile. So it was actually a little bit weird that it like prompted us to import again there, probably because we switched build servers in between there, and for some weird reason it wanted us to again. Not a huge deal, but probably not ideal. So we'll let it import. Okay, also if you're using coc-metals, you'll notice that it will say this little like metals thing here, just to say that like it's ready, and that's pretty much it. Oh, actually, I think I may have just like the reason why this isn't working. Val A is, we'll do an override. It's actually not showing up. I'm curious what's going wrong. Let's look at the config again. Super method cone lenses is enabled. Ah, okay. So here's another little tricky part that I forgot about COC. Code lenses by default aren't enabled, so I'm pretty sure you have to do code lenses enabled. Boom. It's false by default. So let's turn this on. Now, if we go back, boom, there. Now we see them. That was what I was looking for. So if we want to jump to what this overrides, we can trigger the code lens. And like by default, I'm pretty sure what's like leader, actually, I don't know what it is by default, but I have it mapped to leader CL for code lens. And then we jump up to this A here. And if we want to go up one level further, we do leader CL, and we jump up to where it was defined. So you can jump up the entire tree there. I believe you can also do, like if you go into the command thing again, and you do super method hierarchy, this should show you the entire hierarchy, which it did not, which I'm curious why not. I don't see any errors. I'm not sure why it didn't work, but it should show you the entire hierarchy. Let's try this one more time because I'm not fully sure why it didn't. All right, something to explore later on, but that's how the jump to super methods lens works. Okay, I mentioned a little bit earlier that I really like the I think your cursor needs to be on the method name. Maybe let's try that. Boom. Thank you, Agile, you got it. Yeah, so you need to be on the actual method name, so you need to be on A, but now you get to see like the entire tree and you can choose which one you jump to, which is pretty cool. So one of my other favorites, we'll go here, and instead of just printing this, we'll throw a new exception. Oh no. Okay. And let's say you wanted to run this. And here we'll get into like a little bit of different like styles of how you may run stuff, right? Because at this point, like if you're especially a coc-metals user and you want to run some code, you have like multiple options. You could use Vimspector to run it if you want. I feel like a lot of people will use SBT. Actually, let's use built-in term. I'm trying to get more used to using that. A lot of people will like do SBT run. This will start SBT. It'll have to recompile your code and then it will run it. But if you want, it's already compiled with Bloop, so you can literally just do loop run root. And then boom, it runs like immediately. So I'm a huge fan of the Bloop CLI because like it allows you to like run test stuff like very, very quickly for any stuff. Like if you like the basic commands you need are like Bloop projects to see like what your projects are, root and root test. And then also like run, test, you can test individual things, super useful. Big fan of Bloop. So let's say we try to run something and we get this stack trace. And you're like, oh man, like I don't know where this is coming from, what's going on, I want to fix this. You can basically just not be in your term anymore and jump up here, and you can copy your entire stack trace like this, and you can go back to where we were. You can just go to any place, to be honest. You open up your command palette again, and you go to the analyze stack trace command, and then you see this, which is amazing in my opinion. And what this is, it's a special file called stack trace Scala, which is created in your .metals directory, which has the stack trace, and then also has all the positions that it can like pull out of this thing. And you have these little open code lenses here. So like we want to go to where this all started, for example, we can do that. Boom, hello. So you can jump to like your entire stack trace through this. It's incredibly useful in my opinion. It's one of the biggest things I miss about NeoVim-metals. So this is a super cool feature. I use SPT server nowadays, SPTN. What's good is that you have all of your SPT tasks available to you. Yeah, totally true. Yep, that's like a big reason to use it if you want that. With Bloop, you can run multiple microservices in the big monorepo in different terminal. Yep, that's also a big benefit of Bloop. Like if you have like, I don't know, 3 different projects, you need 1 Bloop server running. If you have 3 different projects and you're using SPT as a build server, you need 3 SPT servers running. So that's not ideal, but yeah. They each have benefits, I would say, in like different use cases. Like if you also like are a heavy SPT user, it makes sense to use SPT as a build server. If you really like Bloop and you like have a pretty heavy terminal like workflow and you don't mind just using Bloop, like the Bloop is perfect. It's actually still supported better in my opinion, and that's why we use it by default. Like we don't really test very much with the SPT BSP as well, but yeah, they're both great. So what else do we have available to us? Worksheets. We can talk about worksheets. You can do a quick worksheet. That's one way to create a worksheet. You can do a new Scala file. It's another way to create a worksheet. Let's use the quick worksheet one. Creates a worksheet named the package name plus worksheet.scala. Val x equals 3. Should evaluate quite quickly. And there you go. We have virtual text that is showing us the result of this. And that's how worksheets work. Worksheets are pretty simple to use. They're really helpful. I recommend people to use them. They're great. Let's go back to here. What are some other things we can show you? Let's say we jump back to foo and we say that this is a string. Now we jump back to hello and we might be having some issues or want to know like I changed something, where are the issues? By default, you can use space A, and this will bring up workspace diagnostics for you. So now I could jump down here, or search through them rather, and figure out like where I want to go. So you can jump right to where your diagnostics are. Super helpful. Also, I mentioned like the color when I first started showing you the VimRC stuff. The red color that I changed was this because I hated what the default was. So like that red is like, it's not like that by default, FYI. Trying to think what else we can show you. Let's actually go back there really quick and undo this so it works. Let's do B here so it's not complaining. Let's jump back to hello. So earlier on too, we talked about what happens if we ignored the prompt to import our build again, but then we want to be prompt, right? So like, let's say we change this to 5 and I say, don't ever show me this again. I never want to see it. Okay. So now if we change this again, it's not going to show us. Like it's never going to show us again. Like change it to 3 and you save, it's not going to show you. Like it's kind of like you have to do it yourself. but then you decide, well, I want to see it again. So you can reset that choice as well. You can go back to your command palette. You can do reset choice here, and you can say, which do you want to reset? I want to reset the build import one. And now this will, again, be able to prompt you when you change something in here. So that's one way to reset stuff. What else we got in here? Let's say we wanted to see a symbol outline of this file. By default, you can do space, think space O. Yep. And now you see a outline down here of everything you could go to in the file. So like, let's say you're searching for greeting, you can do greeting, boom, and you jump to it. It's pretty easy for code navigation. Let's also talk a little bit about the tree view, which we haven't talked about yet. So like, let's say we have this, which is instance, boom, equals instant.now. And you're like, I want to know where instant is. Okay, so obviously you can just like navigate to it, go to definition, but then you want to see like, well, where is this located? Let's see if I remember the shortcut for this. Tree find. I thought it was tree find. Oh, it's space tree find. All right, I was doing the wrong one. So what you saw me do right here, there's two different things. Like if you want to open the tree view, you can do space T, which is the default mapping, and that will open this up. So up here in the top left-hand corner, you have the metals compile window, which will show you the ongoing compilations for your project. There's none right now. So like, let's say we did change this though, and I try to save, you should see it like pop up. Maybe. Yeah, boom. You saw root pop up like just a second because it was compiling, and then it was gone. So that's useful if you have like a bunch of different projects compiling at the same time and you did like a cascade compile. We have the metals packages view down here, which is pretty useful. So you can like go through everything that you see. If you have some external libraries, like we're using Scala test in this project, so you can go to like Scala test. Actually, like, let me show you how I often get into this. Let's go to our test file. So we'll close that. We'll go to hello spec. And let's say I'm like, oh man, what's any flat spec? How does that work? So I go to that definition. And now I'm like, like I really want to know like what else is available to me in this class. Like how do I figure that out? Do I look at like the entire symbol hierarchy? Do I look through this file? What I can do is I can do the default mapping of space TF for like tree find, and I can do this, and it should bring me right to the place in the tree where this is defined, any flat spec. So now I can see the entire, everything that's defined in this file right away. So we have a package, flat spec, there's a flat spec light class, what's in there? Oh, okay. Note, what's note? I want to go to note. So you can hit R by default and it'll jump you to note. So this is another really good way to like navigate around your code base, which this doesn't quite exist, or doesn't exist at all in NeoVim-metals yet, which is, I would say, like another big thing we're missing. So that's one way to navigate around, which I think is a really great way. Oh yeah, and then the bottom window, which I didn't show you, which let's close this, is like you can click these to like import your build again. You create a new Scala project. I don't really use these. I don't use coc-metals at all anymore. So like I never use these, but when I was using it, I wasn't using these all the time, but they're pretty useful. So let's go back to hello, and what else can we show you? Does anybody have like any questions so far about coc-metals? Like anything I've shown, how to set something up, how something works, like functionality that I maybe didn't cover yet that you're curious about? Anything? If not, we can keep cruising along. I feel like I'm for sure missing stuff. .q. That was an accident. I bet it was an accident. One other thing to note, like using coc-metals here, like there's not an extra completion plugin. This is all default coc. There's not an extra plugin that is showing me like symbols. There's not an extra plugin that is showing me this. Like this is all built in. Like it's one of the benefits of coc-metals is that like literally everything is built in this coc.neovim. There's nothing extra that's needed. Maybe let's go to coc config again one more time, and I can see if there's any. Oh yeah, I have one more that I think is useful to know. So let's say we have resolve import. It's like a code action, right? If I'm understanding what you mean by resolve import. Let's say we don't have this import in here. Okay, this is going to give you an error, right? Like, I really want to get this into scope. So when you are hovering over this, you can trigger a code action, and then sure enough, you know you have a code action that you can import instant from package Java time. How did I do that? Well, you have to, I think the default, I think I'm using the default, is just leader CA import instant. That's one way you can resolve that import. Another way that you can get automated imports like this is if you're using a completion. That's how I did it before, right? So like this completion option actually holds another text edit, which is the import itself. So now you see you can import it that way as well. What are some other code actions? We like literally went over this pretty in depth in my last stream. Oops, I don't know why I deleted that. But let's say we also have a val y equals a thingy equals thingy 23. That's not going to work, right? You should also be able to do another code action, create new symbol thingy. Boom. And then what is this thing? It's a case class. And thingy takes in a, which is an int. So now if we jump back over to where we just were, this will compile fine because we just created that. So there's a bunch of different code actions like that that you have. Oh yeah, formatting is maybe another one we could think about. By default, if you do format, which is in part of the mappings, you're calling Scala format behind the scenes to format your code. There is also the organize imports. So this won't remove it, I don't believe, because we don't have a flag in here to warn about unused imports. But if I have like imports Java time clock, and we have these out of order here, we should be able to do a editor action organize imports, and boom, now you see them swapped around. So organize imports work as well. What else? Anything else people can think of? If not, I have one more thing I think we can show. So let's say we had a method def do thing, and do thing takes in an int, and it also takes in an implicit int, b of int, okay, and it just does a times b, okay. And then in scope here we have an implicit val c, and that is 3, okay. So we can call this do thing 2, okay. Now everybody loves implicits, they're the coolest thing ever, and the most confusing part about them is that you never really know like what the hell is going on with them half the time, unless you like are great with, I don't know, realizing it. You can hover on this obviously, and you can see that there is an implicit in the parameter here, but that's not always the case, right? So you might want to see more information about this, and one way to do that is if we go back into your COC config, there are some special settings. Why do I keep doing that? We can do metals, and we can do show implicit arguments, okay? And this is off by default. Turn this thing on to true, jump back over here, and I think now if you hover over this again, you'll see an extra section in the bottom there called with synthetics added, and it will show you exactly what it is and where it's coming from. So now I can say do thing, I'm calling this with 2. I can see that the signature has an implicit B, and what is like fulfilling that, example greeting C. So this is super useful as well. With what command do you hover? So with hover by default it is Shift K. Shift K. I should have turned on like my keycaster thing. Actually, do I have that? Key, nope, don't have it on this computer. But yeah, so that's how you do hover. Shift K. Documentation. Yep. So Documentation, it depends by what you mean by documentation. There's always the help documentation for COC metal, or for COC itself, like all the, like let's say you just were wondering about hovering, right? So like COC, there's probably like a COC hover. Nah, it's probably not actually. Honestly, the best way to like figure out like what all these things are mapped to is you go to like the default mapping that's here. You look for hover, and you see that there is this thing. There's this function show documentation, which can also either show you the Vim help docs or will do a COC action do hover, and this is mapped to a to a capital K here. So this is one way. Like really, like when you do, if you are starting with coc-metals and you're copying this in, don't just like copy it and forget about it. It's like at least read through it once to see like what's actually in here, because oh yeah, like one thing we didn't really talk about yet is like how do you go to the previous diagnostic, the next diagnostic, like that type of stuff. All of that's in here. So like you really do need to know like what things are mapped to. One other thing we can do is, well, what does do thing return? Like it returns an int, and I can see that here, right? But if you have something that doesn't necessarily isn't explicit about it, and it may be hard to figure out, there is another COC config. You can do metals show infer type and set this to true as well. And now you will get a little bit more info. Like this one isn't that helpful here because it's already there. But if you had like a for comprehension or something and you wanted to know like what it was at each stage, you would be able to see that information here. And I think actually it's the same thing if you have like a val my list equals 1, 2, 3, and you did like my list, map over that, and did like x times 2. Let's see what this shows actually. Value map is not up. So if we hover over this, you can see that the map is going to result in an int. So like that's another one of the things that like without what we just added, that wouldn't be there. So that's always good to add in as well. I'm trying to think if there's any other thing that I might be missing. Oh yeah, if you have some issues, you might want to run the doctor, which is right here. This will tell you what build server you're currently using. If you have 2 different build files in your workspace, it'll tell you what build file you're using. It will also show you the Scala version for each target. One question we get a lot of time is, why is this at 2.12.12? I'm using 2.13. This is the SPT build itself. So the reason you're seeing 2.12.12 here is because that is the version that this version of SPT is using itself. And same thing if you had like a nested project directories, you would see this multiple times. Then you would see like stream example build, and then you would see that as well. So this will change, like if you would change your SPT version to 1.50, for example, you'll see that go to 2.12.13. So in a nutshell, that is coc-metals. Pretty easy to get started. Everything is included, and things seem to like work fairly well. Any questions on coc-metals at this point? If not, we'll move right along. So I think that's all we're going to cover about coc-metals. So we're going to exit. And now we are going to start with NeoVim-metals. If you are unfamiliar with NeoVim-metals and have never started it before, there's a couple things you need to know before you start. And I'm going to take another drink of water because my throat is parched. So, NeoVim-metals. This plugin is for the built-in LSP support in NeoVim. So if you're going to use it, you can't just use the stable release of NeoVim. You have to be using the latest release of NeoVim. And there is some setup that you need to do, and there's a little bit of like confusion you need to avoid. So if you are using the NeoVim LSP for another language, you may have noticed this NeoVim LSP config, which is another project which gives you an easy way to set up a server to be used with NeoVim. But it's a little bit limited in what exactly it can do, so we don't use it. You can use it with metals. There is a metals file in here, but I do recommend you not to. I'd rather, it will work for most things, but not all things, and you want to get the same level of experience because there are a lot of the majority of the metals LSP extensions are covered with NeoVim-metals. The correct initializations are all set with NeoVim-metals, and there's integrations, like I said, with NeoVim DApp that's in NeoVim-metals as well. The best place to go if you're going to get started with this is NeoVim-metals, and the help docs will pretty much tell you everything you need to know about how to get started. It's really, I try to be very thorough here on this, okay? So we are going to open this up just so I can run and install. So we were previously using plug, but now we're like jumping into my other setup, which uses pretty much as much Lua stuff as possible. So I'll do some more explanation about like what plugins I'm using in a little bit, but everything pretty much at this point will be Lua, okay? And to get started, let me go to here. I'll show you a very simple file called, I think it's minimal.lua or simple Lua. Nope, simple Lua. Simple Lua. Okay. So this would be like something that you would need to like just get started, right? So if you're gonna get started, what would you need to do? Like ignore these functions up here for a second. You would need like a package manager. So I'm using Packer here. That's what you see here. And the only thing for setup I found is not obvious at first. And one needs to configure NeoVim completion. Defaults are a bit frustrating. That's also like a bit opinionated, right? Like technically you don't need to set up NeoVim completion. Completion will still work even if you just do this. But ins completion works a little bit differently, right? Like you still need to like then trigger it manually. You don't get that like automatic window with completion options that like we're used to with like things like coc-metals or other extensions. So if you want a more polished completions, then yes, you absolutely need that. And we'll cover that in a little bit. So I have my package manager. Related to exactly what you just said, I have this, which I'll get to in a second. The second thing you need is Scala Meta NeoVim-metals, and this will install NeoVim-metals. And then I highly recommend using something like NeoVim comp or NeoVim completion, which Truviendel just mentioned. I used to use NeoVim completion, but I switched to using NeoVim comp because especially in my like very large Scala projects for work, it would hang like pretty bad, or like as I would be like tabbing through my completion options, the completion item resolve next to it would like be a second behind, and it was like infuriating. So I switched to NeoVim comp, and it also has really good snippet support as well. So let's just say these are the only two plugins you are going to be using for now, NeoVim-metals and NeoVim comp. This is an optional setting, which is not needed at the moment. So like you can delete this. We'll actually comment it out just to avoid any confusion. This little setting here is extremely important. This like threw me for a loop and like took me a long time to figure out. Was if you have an auto command that is related to a file type, it won't show messages unless you have this. So you need the F. So make sure to add something like this in there. It's in the docs. Similar to what we saw with coc-metals, you need mappings. So here are some default mappings for things like hover, go to references, formatting, all that kind of stuff. So here's some mappings which aren't, they're a little bit more like streamlined, I would say, than what you saw with coc-metals. If you're using a completion plugin like I am up here with comp, where was I? Comp right here. you're going to need some settings for that. So here I'm just like enabling it, turning auto completion on. I don't want debug. Some timeout stuff, some other, like saying I want snippets, for example, saying I want LSP support, I want Lua support, snippets. And then these are mappings related to comp, which are like how I would use tab to filter through the options, and then also enter to confirm. And now we get down to the really important stuff, right? So like, again, just to remind you, like we didn't do anything yet. We're just setting up for NeoVim-metals. We haven't installed anything yet, okay? So a couple things that you need to do right away. The first thing would be you would need to add this auto command. And what this is just an auto command on a file type for Scala or SPT. It requires metals, which is the plugin that we are about to install. And then it calls the initialize or attach method, and it takes in a metals config, okay? How do you get the metals config? So if you just wanted to do default, you could just do this as well. I don't recommend doing this. There's probably things you want to add here, but this would work as well. And then you don't need to worry about anything else. You could just get started. But we want some other stuff. So to get a new default config, like with the correct shape and stuff, you can do this require metals bare config. So this is just a table here. In here, we have some settings. I have a couple just to show as an example, and we can go through more of these later. Like, let's say I want to see implicit arguments, so I have this turned on. I want to exclude some packages, like for example, like let's say I do a lot of Akka stuff. I don't want Java DSL things in my completion, so I'm turning the Java stuff off. I'm excluding them from my completions. I want a specific type of prefix on my virtual text, for example, like something. The only reason I put this in here is to like give you an example of how to do it. So handlers, what are handlers? If you're really unfamiliar with this at all, you can do help LSP handlers. And this will, maybe LSP handler is actually better. Handler. This goes over what handlers are, and you can think of it as that any communication that's going back and forth from the server to the client, like workspace show hover, or workspace or worksheet hover rather, or actually text document hover is what I'm thinking of. That like request response are all handled by handlers on the server and client side. So everyone has a similar shape, and this is what handles it. So like when you get a request for something coming in, like if there's a function here to handle it, that's how it's handled. So when you're adding custom things in, like the metals ones, for example, like metals status, it's just a handler called metals status that we have a function attached to it that knows how to handle what the parameters are for that. So it's a really easy way to handle pretty much any status, any like method basically coming from the LSP. And what I'm showing here is that you can pretty much like mix and match, change the behavior for any of them. So like, let's say the publish diagnostics handler, I want to change that a little bit because I want some fancier virtual text that has this box as a prefix. And this is how I would do it. I would say vim LSP with, and then whatever the name of the handler is, vim LSP diagnostic on publish diagnostics. And then I want the virtual text prefix to be this. And we can look at some more examples of this later. The capabilities are, normally you won't touch these that much. This one is probably the only one that you would want to do. So like by default, you don't get snippet support in some of these completion items. So in order to turn completion snippet support on, you need to do this. You need to make client capabilities, text document, completion item, snippet support, true. And like to clarify, like this isn't something that like is specific to metals. This is like by default, NeoVim LSP support doesn't support snippets. So like when they send in the first initialize process, they say like we don't support snippets. And the reason metals just doesn't do this automatically is because if you're not using a plugin that does support snippets, then you're going to get completion items that may not function correctly without snippet support. So that's why we like have this extra step here for you. Okay. Then you say metals config capabilities equal the capabilities that I just created right there. Okay. So this is a pretty small setup, like just to reiterate again, like here, these are just helper functions. We add in the plugins, we set some mappings, and we set some completion stuff up, which is optional. And we set up the auto command. These are just extra things if you want document highlighting for symbols to work correctly on hover. I'll show you what I mean by this. It's hard to if you're unfamiliar with symbol highlights, I'll show you when we open a file right away. And then we need some special like metals config stuff that we set up. Okay, so let's go back to our demo, and we're going to do the same Vim-U thing, but instead of COC Vim, we're going to open it with simple Lua and open this up. And actually, before we do this, let's clean the workspace again. So we're starting with a clean workspace. And if you're like curious what clean BSP workspace does, it just like deletes your .bloop directory, deletes your .metals directory, deletes your like anything related to metals. Can you upload simple Lua somewhere? Yeah, it's actually already uploaded. So if you go to the NeoVim-metals GitHub and you go to discussions, inside of discussions, we have minimal example configuration. And what you're seeing is basically this right here. So this is like a very minimal example to get started. And if you aren't doing a Lua setup, you can also do, I have a Vim one here, for a Vim script one rather. But this is sort of like a use at your own risk because I'm not updating it anymore. Because yeah, I just don't want to maintain it. So let's get started. Open this up for the first time. And now you see, here is the prompt. Yeah, death to Vim script. Let's be real. Nobody likes Vim script. I think we can maybe all agree to that. So, new SPT workspace detected. This should look familiar from before. What do you want to do? We want to import the build. Boom. So, Scala Lu. do we really need Scala Lu or want Scala Lu? Scala Lua. What you'll see on the bottom is, again, you're seeing this metals log running SPT bloop install. You might also, again, be wondering, like, why am I not seeing it up here where I wanted to see it like I did before? And that's because we don't have a metals status thing installed. One thing I skipped over right away, which I shouldn't have probably, is if metals wasn't installed, you would open this file, nothing would happen, right? So you would just do a metals install, and behind the scenes, this would install metals for you using Corsair. You have to have Corsair installed, and that's what you saw was, metals installed, like have a good day writing Scala, okay? That's what gets you started with NeoVim-metals. So again, like the very basics of getting started is quite simple for this one as well. Let's jump to hello, and I'll just show you that a couple things work here, and then I'm going to actually jump into my own like personal setup just because it looks way nicer and it'll be easier to explain stuff. So hover works the same way, right? Like Shift K will show you some hovers. If I want to go to definition, I can do that. I have it mapped to leader GD, which jumps me up here to greeting. So pretty much everything like will work out of the box, including diagnostics, right? Like if I screw this up, you'll see the sign gutter will show me an E for an error. I'll see my virtual text, and you'll see the little preface, like the preface thing that we added, which was special. And completion should work as well. So like if we go down here again and we do my list, there we have a completion item. Map, there's all your completion items, but the color is like extremely ugly. So the reason I use this simple one when I'm trying to like debug stuff and not have many plugins, so that's why it looks so bare. Okay, so let's get rid of this, and now let's open it with my actual setup. Okay, and we'll go through everything. I can answer questions about it, but it will be much easier to explain. So let's go to hello. This is where we were before, and let's try to do some of the same things that we were doing earlier, right? if you remember, we tried to do space C, and space C would open up this command menu with like all the different metals commands, okay? So where are all the metals commands with NeoVim-metals? If you do a help metals commands, here we have a list of all the commands that are available to you. They're pretty similar to all the commands that we had before, and the way that you can use them are, there's multiple ways. There's built-in these, which are kind of helpers for you. So like, let's say we want to create a new file, metals new Scala file. I want to do another case class, and it's called wow. And this will create you a new file. Okay, same thing for a new Scala project. Like if I want to use, like generate a brand new Scala project, I can do that. And I want to use the hello world template, and I want it to be in the same directory that I'm at, and I want to call it wow project. And now behind the scenes, it's running git-8, which is like embedded into metals in this point, and it created a brand new project called wow project. So if I would look here, wow project is right here with a brand new like Scala project ready to rock and roll. Okay, so same thing with some of the extra settings that we wanted. Like if I hover over this, I want to see what this type is. Oh, okay, so I see that there's an inferred type right here. So I have that same setting on that we did before, show inferred type. If I wanted to see the implicit value, here we go again. Like I have this same thing showing me the implicit. So this, a lot of the same settings that existed that we just went over will exist here as well. There's a couple things that don't exist. There is no metals analyze stack trace command, you'll see. There is no go to super method. There's no code lenses. Like you can't jump to a super method, for example. Code lenses work the same way. Like let's say I wanted to insert the type here. I could trigger a code lens or code action, sorry. The way I do that is literally the same way I did it with coc-metals, leader CA. And then it opens my code actions, insert inferred type, boom. The organized imports is built in as well, like metals organized imports. I have formatting built in as well. So format. Okay, so I'm trying to format. I've never formatted in this file before. So in order to do that, it wants me to create a Scala format file. Okay, boom. Now I created a Scala format file and I can format. So like everything kind of works the same way that you would expect it to. Okay. So let's get rid of this. Simplify a little bit. Val x equals 3. We're going to get rid of that. Oops. Except do extends. Yep. So I maybe should have showed that, but there's a couple different plugins that I'm using to, I would say, enhance my experience, right? So like if we go back to this, and I use the simple.lua, and let's go into source, main, Scala, example, hello. And I'm going to do the insert inferred type here, right? Once it indexes. Ooh, I might not actually have it mapped. Let's take a look at that actually. Code action. Oh no, I do have it. Leader CA. Oh, okay. So leader CA. It's not actually working. Why aren't you working? Leader, code action, help, buff. Maybe it's wrongly mapped. Code action. There should be an action right there. LSP buff code action. Well, let's try a different one just to make sure, because maybe you're right. Val y equals hi. Whoops. No, it's not actually working because there should be a code action available here as well. But we can do, I think, LSP vim LSP buff code action like this. We could just trigger it manually. Boom. So there's another thing to remember is like with all of this Lua things, if you want to call something, call a method, you can do it exactly like I just did it. So if you go to the mapping like to give you an example of how this works. This mapping of leader CA is literally just a command, Lua, Vim LSP, buff code action. So like I can take this literal command here, go to this, throw it in there, and it will do it. It's pretty easy. But notice that the code action menu down here is opening at the bottom, right? So that's not super nice, but it works, right? The same thing if I am doing find references, right? Like if I do a find references on this, or go to references, you'll see that it opens up down in the quick fix menu down here. So you shouldn't be seeing this window, because like this is another plugin that's bleeding in right now. But there's not a default really great way to see this. Same thing with if you want to trigger a rename, right? Let's see if I have a rename mapped. Yeah, I do. Leader RN. So let's try to rename this. I actually don't know what's going on with my mappings. They seem to not be working. So let's say Lua Vim LSP buff rename. No, what is it? Oh no, it should be buff rename. Let's copy this. Yeah, true. Default leader. That's probably what it is. Good catch. Yeah. So let's actually go back. I think leader is this. Rename. Nope. There we go. Yep. So yeah, now you see the new name prompt is down here. Wow. So it works. It's maybe not the prettiest thing, but yeah, it works. So you'll notice that a lot of the default things like find references, code actions, renames, they're like a little bit raw. So you'll notice that like a lot of people will be mixing and matching different plugins that will be bringing you different functionality. And maybe that's a good time to like jump ahead here, and we'll like go over some of this while I'm showing you some NeoVim-metals stuff. So these 4 plugins, I would say, are plugins that I use pretty heavily to really enhance my LSP experience. The top one, NeoVim Comp, is for completions and for snippet support. For example, things like, so let's jump out of here, go back into here, go to hello. Trying to think like what a good snippet would be. I think what one is like, let's say we have an option here, option of an int, and this is sum3. If I'm going to do an A match, after it compiles, of course, you'll see how that just happened. Like behind the scenes, if you actually look at what that completion looks like, so let's go back here. So on the right hand side, what I did is I opened up the tail, like the LSP logs, and if I look here, let's find it here, right here. So this completion item for exhaustive, you'll see it has some new lines in here, some $0, and this $0 is actually part of the snippet where it's telling the client, like, after you complete this, I want my cursor to end up here. So if you tried to use this with the default like completion, with probably like with NeoVim completion or something without any snippet, or even NeoVim comp without any snippet, and you turn snippets on, you would get like a mumbled completion. More than likely it would look like, so like it's working, it looks like this. More than likely you would see like something that would look like this if you weren't using a snippet plugin and you completed that. It would be like super wonky. Your like cursor would still be like right here, and it wouldn't compile. It wouldn't work right. So that's what the snippets are. They make stuff like this work really well, and then you can just keep on jamming. All right. Metals itself offers some of these snippets in recent times. I saw a few already. Yep. again, it depends if you have it turned on, and it depends what you're completing. Yeah, because we also, without any plugins. Ah, really? Do you remember off the top of your head maybe like what completion it was? Because we should actually have some checks in Metals itself that make sure we don't give snippets to clients that don't say they support snippets. Pattern matching, like what I just showed, will happen without. I mean, we can test this if you want. So like, let's go back to simple over here. So like, let's try this out once. So let's just use NeoVim comp, get rid of the snippet integration. And then if we go down to Metals capabilities, we're gonna say we don't want snippets turned on. So then we're just gonna use the Metals, the default capabilities here. Now if I go back here and I like restart everything, open this up, if I do that same match, it shouldn't give me a snippet. Hopefully. Still gave me a snippet and it still worked. Awesome. Now I'm pretty sure, so like when you use VU like this to load up, you're only using that init file, but your plugin path isn't changed. So my snippet plugin is still there. However, it didn't send it in that I supported it. So I am like curious why we do send this back. And what I mean by that is like if we look at the initialization process here, I'm assuming that it shouldn't be listed under capabilities. So like let's look to see what NeoVim sends in. So yeah, here Metals is saying I received the initialize request right here, initialize. Capabilities. Yeah, you see, so snippets completion. Yeah, it doesn't say, oh no, it is. Completion item, snippet support, true. What the hell? Huh. Let's set this to false then and see if it works. Set this to false. Go back over here. Hello. All right, let's try this out now. Because now I would really expect. Oh, actually, we should have done this. Nope. Tail LSP. Let's go back up to. Let's shut that down again. Open this up. Okay. I think this is initialize. Capabilities. Completion. What? Snippet support. True. What in the world? All right. So this might be something that like we're doing wrong on the nvim-metals side, because I was kind of under the assumption that this would work as expected here, but I guess it's not working, to be honest. So we should figure out what's going on there. I'll look into that later. But in theory, Metals shouldn't be giving snippets when the client says that it doesn't support snippets for completion items. And they shouldn't work when they're given to a client that doesn't have, like, actually, if we probably really want to check this, we can do Packer sync. And since I don't have it defined, oh no. Packer clean maybe? Nope, I don't know. I'll have to dig into it later. Okay, let's open this back up. Oh, did I? Hold on a second. I was opening it with my normal thing, so like, of course it's not gonna work. Let's try this again. Let's try this again, folks. So we'll open this. We'll tail LSP. And all right. So now let's look. So here's the initialize, capabilities, where are the completions? There we go. So snippet support is false now, which is what we expected. So let's see if it will actually send it in or not. So let's do this. Go to hello, and let's try this out again. So now we have the, yeah, so it actually still sends it in, which is interesting. I wonder if the completion item has the $ thing still. Like it still is trying to tell us where it works, but you do see that things are formatted a little wonky, right? Like this is over here, should be up here. These should be in as well. So like the new lines seem to be handled correctly, but the actual like tabs aren't handled. So let's try to find this. This might take a while to find, so here we go. Oh no, so okay, so I guess the difference is exactly what I just said. So if you tell the server I don't support snippets, then it's not going to give you any part of the snippet, right? You'll see that the $0 is no longer in this new text, but the new lines and tabs are, which is expected because new lines and tabs are completely fine. Like there's nothing about the spec saying it can't have new lines and stuff. So that's actually expected. So this is doing what we expected. It's just that without setting it to false, I sort of assumed that it was going to be true, or sorry, I sort of assumed that it was defaulting to false, but we can actually check this really quick and pretty easily as well. Like, so if you've never like looked at the NeoVim codebase itself, we can do Lua workspace, NeoVim, capabilities. So this is where NeoVim sets the base capabilities, I believe. Completion, oh, it's right there. Oh, interesting. So it's set to false by default. So how in the world was it getting to be set to true? Maybe this whole thing was like a fluke, and this like maybe I was really just loading up the wrong one the entire time when I didn't have it. But I think you get the idea, and I don't want to go down this rabbit hole too much right now. But snippet support is false by default. You send it in, it's not going to give you snippets. So, all right, clear, I think. So let's close this, get rid of the trace file, close this, go back to my setup, and let's talk about some of the other things. So maybe a good way to also do this is like the metals help text has a ton of stuff, right? The getting started stuff we pretty much already went through. Prerequisites, we know how to start it and set it up, right? Like it's all working on this auto commands. It's a file type one that we need to do here, and the initialization options, which are customizable, the settings, which are also all custom. Here's like the examples I give, which are similar to what we showed early on. And here are all the settings, which you can set at your leisure. And I go through all of them. The only other thing I would say that's like maybe a little bit surprising, or not surprising, just different than what we were looking at before. So let's say we do this and do a print. Wow. Actually, let's change this to wow. One of the things I said that NeoVim-metals does like quite a bit nicer than coc-metals is the debugging integration. And I have NeoVim DApp installed, and there's a couple things that I'll show you that are really easy to do. So you can open your DApp REPL like this, which is I have mapped to just liter dr. So down here is my DApp REPL. If I wanted to run this, I could literally just do a DC, which gives me the various configurations and where are these defined. If I jump to, let's see, I'm gonna do this. Let's go to, actually, I'm not sure if they are, where they are. Run type, LSP, Oops. Okay, so I have 3 different configurations. So if you're going to use this, you will also need to do these, and they are also in the documentation. Is you say, I want the configurations for Scala. There's going to be 3 types. There is going to be a run, a test file, and a test target. They're all really similar. The only difference pretty much is the name and the metals run type. Okay, so if we go back to this, and let's say I want to run, boom. Behind the scenes, it should be connecting to metals, just to make sure like nothing exploded or something. Sorry to derail on snippets. We were also discussing virtual window usage. Yes, okay, that's true. Let me. Yep, you're totally right. I'm like jumping around. Let me go back to that, or 2 things. So before we jump into, before we go into debugging, let me continue to go through the differences that I was talking about. So we showed like how rename had this like little thing on the bottom. The finding references was also something similar, and then also the code actions was that way as well. And I was talking about some of the other plugins that I use, right? So we got way off on a tangent on snippets because of NeoVim comp. The other plugins that I would say that I use pretty heavily, the first one is NeoVim Telescope, and that's what you see me using here to navigate around. So when I open up a file like this, if I want to jump back to hello, this find files will give me a list of files kind of similar to a fuzzy finder and allow me to jump to it. You can't see it because I have like a larger screen, but if I make this quite a bit smaller here, and I do this as well, open it up, it'll show me a preview on the right hand side of the file, which is quite nice. Come back. So let's jump to hello. Another really cool thing that I use Telescope for is for searches across my entire code base. So if I do LG, I have leader LG for a live grep. So you can search for anything in my code base, and same thing, it'll give me a preview on the right hand side if I don't see it. So I use that pretty heavily. I also want to say, but I don't remember because honestly I just don't use it a ton. Let's go to my telescope settings, symbols. Yeah, you should, I think it's just a toggle for hidden. I don't know what it is off the top of my head, but I'm pretty sure it's just a setting that when you do like require telescope setup, that you say like show hidden files or something like that. It's super simple. LSP workspace symbols, I also use it for this, but I don't use it a ton, to be honest. Like if I jump back to my init and look at what workspace symbols is mapped to, GWS. Let's jump back here. So if I do a GWS and query for WoW, I'll also get my workspace symbols in Telescope here. So I can then, go around. Like this doesn't look very impressive because it's only 2 things, but if you have a giant code base, like this is really handy as well. So basically I use Telescope for finding files, which isn't part of LSP, live grep, which also isn't part of LSP. The only LSP related thing I use it for, which might be relevant, is the workspace symbols. Okay. The other one on that list that we were looking at, LSP Saga, I use this not fully because there's quite a few things that I don't use of it. And what I do use of it is for renames, which gives me this nice prompt versus like the little one way on the bottom. I also use it for my code actions. When I hover on here, you see the little light bulb and the sign gutter. That's from LSP Saga as well. And then when I trigger a code action, it gives me like this nice little box here. That's also from LSP Saga. That's pretty much all I use actually from LSP Saga, just those few things, because I think they work really nice with LSP Saga. And then the final one that I use quite often, I use a lot actually, and arguably I could just use Telescope for this, but I don't. Class bar extends foo is, let's say I want to find references of this. It will open this up on the bottom, and It show bulb only if you have a code action symbol. Yeah, so the only time it will show a light bulb is if you have a code action that's available at that place. So like if I want to turn this wow into a multi-line string, I know there will be a code action there, and you'll see the light bulb. If I hover over the equal sign, there's no code action that's available here, and so if I try to trigger a code action, it'll say no code actions available. The val wow, if I hover over that, I know there'll be like a show inferred type, so I can do that, and the light bulb will appear. So it will only appear when you have a code action available to you. Actually, I don't even need to do this. Nice. Yeah, it's pretty great. Val up wow equals wow to upper. So if I do, oh yeah, I already had one open, but like let's say I do a find references on wow here. You see in my quick fix window, I have two things, just like I did before. And by default, that's all you're going to see is just like these two entries that are in there. I don't think that's super nice. I really want a preview, and that's what a lot of people will use Telescope for, is to be able to like use quick fix windows for previews as well. But I really like the ability to still jump into my quick fix window or for my like location list as well, and still get a preview. So I use this plugin called NeoVim BQF for better quick fix, because I really like the way that it just like reuses built-in functionality and then improves it. So it still is fully using the quick fix, but is showing you like a really nice preview. So this is what I use for like go to references, find definition, gives me multiple results. Anything that would normally just be piped into the quick fix, I can use this for, and it works really fantastic. I really, really like it. And those 3-4 plugins, I would say, are the ones that I use on top of the built-in LSP to give me a better experience. So like, also one question might be like, well, how do you configure all this stuff? It's the same concept. So like, if I like what you're seeing right now is going to be like much more like, there's a lot more in here that was in the simple one that we looked at before, but it's the same concept, right? Like I have plugins defined in another file that I'm requiring. I have some settings for like my own functions for comp, for my completion functions, Telescope, LSP. Wow, it doesn't show usage of wow 3 times. Cool. Let's look back to see. Find usages. Whoops. It doesn't actually. Line 9, yeah. It's funny because when I'm on this, it'll still jump to the correct definition. And then even if actually, here's the weirder part too, is if I do a go to definition on the symbol itself where it's already defined, it will actually just bring me to the first place it's used, and it knows it's there. But again, if I do find references on it, oh, now it does show up. Maybe it was sort of a fluke or something that it wasn't showing up. But yeah, it's there now. Huh. Yeah, I don't know what was going on. Wow, what's going on here? All right, so let's jump back to my dots. So, what am I doing here? First of all, you might be wondering, like, I use LSP, and what is this like weird require settings LSP setup? All it is I have my own file called, like if you're like unfamiliar at all of how this stuff works, like you have a Lua directory in here. I could do like a require Lua settings, and then inside of settings, I could have a init.lua or just I think I could have also like a Lua settings.lua as well, and this is how you require it. And just inside of my settings directory, I have an lsp.lua file. So if I go to that lsp.lua file, I then define my own function in here called setup, and I just like export it, and then that's what I call setup whenever I'm loading this up. So I'll go back to that in a second, but we'll jump back. So this is how I set all my stuff up. I have my completion setup, telescope setup, LSP setup, galaxy line, which is my status line, my auto pairs set up. I have some tree sitter set up, which is small, so I just leave it in here. Same thing with LSP Saga. I have like a pretty small setup, so it's right here. Then I have all like some extra stuff up there. We'll just skip over some options that are all stuff. And then I have this chunk of stuff here, which is my LSP mappings. So like here you see, I'm actually using the LSP hover as well. Okay. So I lied. I said I was only using code action and something else, but I'm actually using the hover, which is funny because metals also has a hover in it. So like if I wanted to use the metals hover, I could do the same thing. I could like have a normal mapping, map this to like KK, and then the way you would do it would just be you have a command. Lua require whatever the plugin or thing you're using is called, so like metals for example, and I expose I think just like hover, so this would literally be all you would need to do. So if I do see metals functions, I think nope, help metals Lua API.
I'm just looking at the world.
Hover, I bet.
And writing.
Oh no, do I not even, oh I bet you it's under handlers, sorry. Metals handlers. Actually don't know how I expose this. I'm fairly positive. Okay, sorry. I actually don't expose it. It's by default. So what I meant by that is if I would just delete this hover, the hover that, and I would use the normal one. So like what I mean by that is if you do vim lsp buff hover maybe. If you're just using this one, it will actually, I overwrite it inside of NeoVim-metals and you're using the hover that I have there instead of this one. So that was like a bad example to show you. But like, let's say the way you could map, let's say one of the metals things. So like if we look at any of these metals, Lua API, like let's say like I have helpers, right, for all this stuff, BSP switch, but let's say you wanted like a really easy way to do BSP switch. You could just do like whatever your mapping function is, you could do like BSP, and inside of here you could do, I have a command, and it's going to be Lua, I'm going to require metals, then I'm going to, call BSP switch, okay? And make sure to have enter, and that's it. So like now if I was inside of a project and let's start this, and I do a BSP after metals is started, of course. Let's give it a sec. So now you see the warning. So what I did behind the scenes was BSP, boom. And you see a warning, unable to switch build server, bloop, because there's only one build, you don't see the full message, but it says there's only one build server detected in the workspace, bloop, so you can't switch. So if I wanted to switch, I would just do metals generate BSP config, because I know it doesn't exist yet, so this will create it, and then after it's created, it will connect to it, and then I'll try the BSP again, and then you'll see that it will automatically work. So that's how you would like create a mapping for like some of these like custom Lua API stuff that metals has. So we'll get rid of that. But yeah, so the reason I showed you that is like I replace certain things with different implementations, right? So like if you don't like the find references from the core, then you can just use the telescope one. So like same thing, like I don't like the built-in LSP document symbols, so instead I just, for that mapping, I just use the telescope built-in LSP document symbols. Same thing with like all of my Saga stuff. So that's all my mappings. I have some more specific stuff for telescope, NeoVim DApp, some playground things that I like just play around with. Let's go back to the demo just to make sure this is working. So it's still compiling, but actually even if it's still compiling, it should still work. So I'll try BSP, and now I see it works. So I get switched back to bloop, and there you go. That's how you would make a mapping. What else could I show you? What else are you guys curious about? Is there any like other NeoVim-metals things that you are curious, like how it works, something I maybe didn't show yet? Because I feel like I covered so much in the coc-metal stuff, and so much of it is similar in NeoVim-metals, apart from like how you set up, that there's not a whole lot else to show. So what do you think? Any thoughts? Anything that's not clear yet? Cool. That sounds great. Let me really make sure there's like nothing else I could show. Pretty much covered. Oh yeah, I will show a couple other things that are helpful to like debug stuff. So let's just go to a random file. Is there a way to make NeoVim DAC work with cross-Scala projects, or is that more of a Bloop limitation? Oh yeah, I'll actually show a NeoVim DApp first of all, because I didn't really show that. It depends on what you mean by just working with cross-Scala. Like, do you want to be able to run in one version and then run in another version, for example? Yeah, so there's not an easy way to do that with Bloop, you're correct. But you could do it with SPT as your BSP server. And the reason I say that is because, like, let's just pretend that this is a workflow, right? Let's say I want to open SPT as a server, like I could use SPT client or SPTN, and now this is running, right? And I'll open my project on the left-hand side, and by default, I'm using 2.13.5, right? And let's just pretend that this is also set up to cross to 2.12, okay? So let's jump to hello. And I'm still using Bloop right now, so let's do a metals BSP switch, and we'll go to SPT, which should connect pretty fast because I already have the server running on the right hand side. So now you see some stuff there about it connecting. I'm indexing. So something that was recently added in the last version of Metals is also like debug support with SPT BSP as well, which was something that didn't exist before, and one of the big reasons why we still recommended people to use Bloop. So if I wanted to run this file now, right, like I open my DApp REPL and I choose the run configuration. Oh, I have errors in my workspace, so let's fix that first. So boom. Hello greeting should equal hello. Let's just get rid of this and just say hello should equal hello. So we're going to cheat a little bit here for a second. Okay. Let's jump back over here. And now let's actually close this. Okay, so jump back to hello. All right, so let's try the run again. And now still errors in the workspace. Why is there still errors in the workspace? I don't think there's errors in my workspace. Huh, there's no errors in the workspace. All right, let's try one more time, I guess. Run. Huh, so like this might actually be a bug or something, because like it's complaining that there's errors in the workspace, but there's definitely not errors in the workspace. I wonder if this is something weird with SPT that's going on. So for the time being, let's try to switch back to Bloop. Bloop. It's going to index. Everything should be fine. Let's try to run. And now it runs. So you catch that? It was pretty slow, but like run. Wow, run. So same thing if we using this is so simple. And like obviously like I'm not using any advanced features. I'm not doing like yeah, Bloop 1, yes! Like I'm not using anything advanced. I could step through stuff if we really wanted me to. Like I have DApp toggle breakpoints as leader DTB is what I have set up. So like I could do DTB, leader DTB, set a breakpoint here. And if I trigger this again now, oops, you'll see. Oh, I'm not even hitting it at all. That's probably why, actually. Let's do this. Up, wow. Let's do this. Debug, toggle breakpoint, debug, toggle breakpoints. Now I try to run. So now you see, oh no, what is going on, actually?
You said bell peppers and beef.
His name's Asimov Sorensen.
Let's look at my mappings one more time, because I'm a little bit confused. should actually be stopping here. I think I'm probably doing something wrong. Print line. Because I would expect this to be stopping here. So yeah, I'll try to debug that later. But that, so this is how running works. Same thing if I go to spec. If I now do test file, you'll see the test run. If I had more than one test here, I could also do a test target, and it would test all the targets in this file, in this build target. But let me show you what I was trying to show you before, now that like this is hopefully all kosher. So let's start this up fresh, make sure there's no compilation issues. We'll go to hello, and let's see if there is another issue with SPT or not. But let me import this and read this thing real quick. Hint, I'm working on MDoc and it's slowly killing me. Before I realized I was due to bloop mostly. So like you're working on MDoc and bloop was killing you? Like what do you mean by that? Velvet Beldemime. One Metals question. IntelliJ really struggles with cross-platform project, JVM, JS libs. Does Metals have the same problem? There are two IO platform files, one for JS and one for JVM. So Santa War, like, meaning like if there's two files for there and you try to navigate to it, does it screw up, or what exactly do you mean? Because I can literally, like, we can clone that project down and literally try it to see if it has issues or not. While you're chatting, let me do this. Let's go to GitHub. I don't think I have this downloaded actually. Let that clone. All right, so here I have SPT running still. So let's switch to SPT. Connecting to SPT. Debug REPL. Run. Interesting. This, I totally know what's happening. So like if you have SPT start, I just ran into this and somebody just like reported it actually. If you already have SPT server running and you connect to it and it doesn't do a reload, it doesn't reload the SPT plugin that we need to do running. So like that's what just happened here. But anyway, so you just saw this run, right? Like, so now this is running on 2.13. You can then just do, I don't know if this is like as easy as what you're looking for, but you could do 2.12, 2.13, for example, switch to this, do a reload. And then do a metals build import. And now if I'm not mistaken, if I do a, let's close the REPL for a second, do a metals doctor. So, oh no, it's still 2.13. I guess that doesn't work. What I was thinking I could do is like switch it to, by like, I thought I could cheat and do like, switch this to 2.12.13 and then reload, and then it would think that the build target is in 2.12.13, but yeah, that actually doesn't make tons of sense because it's reading from, yeah. So the answer is no. I don't know if there is a good way via DApp to like run a cross-built project, at least not that I know of. Because yeah, like whatever Scala version you have set as like your default Scala version for that project via DApp, like that's the Scala version you're kind of stuck with. So yeah, sorry, I thought I could solve that one, but I guess not. But that is tricky. Play everything using something SPT project matrix. Bum, bum. IntelliJ doesn't know where to go. I think I can't jump to IO platform. All right, let's test this out. But is there, before I move on to, is there any other like DApp related questions, like how this works? Because I do, like, I don't want to gloss over, because it is like a cool topic for, and I feel like it's something great that people can use. Like I've been using it even when I've been working on metals myself, like as an easy way to like test a single file, test an entire target. It's like really, really useful. So test file, and you don't see it unless you open it. So, but yeah, it works really well. I'm a big fan. Working breakpoint is interesting print. Yeah, we can try to figure out what's going on with that, because that should be working as expected. But let's close this down. Whoops. PTNX. Whoops. I always forget that it's actually SPTN. What is it? Do you guys remember what the SPTN command is? SPTN close or exit? Yeah, okay, exit. Yeah, so that's exactly what I just tried, Santa War Chief. I thought I could do the ++ 212, 213, then it would work. But maybe my mistake was reloading the build. Let me try one more time, because I also thought that should have worked. So okay, so by default we're on 213. We're using SPT right away. So let's go to hello, open up the debug REPL, and oh crap, actually close this all down. Start the server first, then we'll open up. Then we'll go to hello. Yeah, possibly we can try that too. Let's do it. Maybe let's do it properly. Cross Scala versions, right? Plus equal. Whoops. Do I have the syntax right for this? Nope. Oh yeah. Bum, bum, bum. Okay, so now if we go to hello really quick, just to make sure that this runs. Wow, runs. Metals doctor will show us 213, 213.5. So let's jump over here. Oops. 212.13. Jump over here. Now the thing is, does this show us 212 or 213? Yeah, it still shows us 213. So even though the server, I don't know, I don't fully know under the hood. I don't think that even doing 22 or like ++, like changing the Scala version that way, I think that changes like anything related to the things that you're doing with SPT from the command line. Yeah. Well, Doctor, every time you run Doctor like this, it will look at the current, like we have a class in Metals called build targets that like does keep a cache of all that stuff. And that's why earlier I thought if I would do a Metals build import, it would re-import the entire build of whatever it's set at. And that would then work. But then again, if I now do a Metals Doctor, it'll still show me 213. And what's happening behind the scenes here is a reload essentially. Like it's the naming comes from Bloop, to be honest, like Metals build import, but it's not actually a build import. It's literally a workspace reload in terms of like BSP terms. So yeah, it doesn't look like the ++ thing will work either. It's kind of a bummer. I wonder how to do that. There has to be a way to do this. How does DAP work though? It depends on how deep you want to go, but one way to maybe look at DAP and like how it works is let's do a metals BSP switch. Go back to Bloop. Yeah, that basically, like simplified, yes, that's how it's working. So, and what's actually going on? Let's do something a little crazy here. Yeah, I thought it would work too. So, one useful thing is this metals info command, and I'll show you why. Metals info. This will show you the location. Oh, Jesus, that looks terrible. I don't even want to admit the reason why it's doing this because it's a little bit embarrassing. But if you ignore all the craziness in that window, useful locations, there's 3 of them. NeoVim-metals log is the log file for like the actual NeoVim-metals. There is the NeoVim LSP log, which is the actual LSP log from NeoVim. And then there is a couple other things that aren't located here, but these are still really useful to know. The one is like if I would do a metals logs toggle, what it does behind the scenes is it does a tail F metals log. So this is one way to monitor. Whoops, that is the database, not the log. So here we're like, I'm gonna make this a little bit smaller just to like this for it to be easier. So we're tailing the metals log, right? We can also tail the LSP logs. So this will tail all LSP communication between client and server. We can also tail the BSP logs. Tail BSP. Now this will be tailing all of the communication between metals and bloop. We can also tail all of the DAP communication, which I apparently don't have an alias for. I think it's in cache actually. No. Local share org. I always forget where this is located. Docs. Contribute to metals. Library caches. CD library caches. I think there's BSP log in here. Yep, DAP. Yeah, so you can serve like, so let's do a tail F DAP server trace. So like this seems crazy here, but literally like you can like, let's just get rid of this one because it's not going to tell us a bunch. Top one, LSP communication. Middle one, BSP communication. Bottom one, DAP communication. You ready for this? So let's close this down, start up, not with boo, with this. So right away, you'll see the top one going crazy, right? LSP communication being sent from NeoVim to metals. Middle one starting to at least do a little bit of something because it's metals talking to bloop, okay? Nothing going on in the DAP one yet, that's expected. So let's jump to hello. Now we have some more BSP stuff going, probably because we're saving and it's doing some stuff. Still a lot of LSP stuff on the top, nothing DAP related yet, right? So what's happening right now, so when I say run configuration here and I click run, what will happen is it will actually send a debug start. I think it's called debug adapter start. I don't even remember exactly what it's called. Debug type. So we're sending this command, the start debug adapter command, and we can actually step through all of this a little bit later if you really want to go deep into like what's actually happening. But we send in a start debug adapter command to metals. Okay, so when I hit this run, you should see the bottom window start to go crazy as well. So now the communication started, and this is going between the debuggee and the debugger. And I believe the debugger in this situation will be bloop, and the debuggee will actually be NeoVim DAP. So like there is tons of ways to like follow the communication everywhere. So like again, top one, LSP communication between NeoVim-metal, well, NeoVim itself and metals. Middle one, BSP communication between metals and bloop. Bottom one, DAP communication between NeoVim DAP and bloop as well. And that all sort of passes through metals, and that's why we have access to all of these, and we like can format them really nicely and see everything. So, but yeah, like if you would actually look at the trace, the DAP trace, you would see like we have a initialize request, which is really similar to the way BSP and LSP works. Then we have a single response, and it says like, what do we all support? What do we do? All this jazz. And then a request is sent. So remember, this looks pretty familiar when we were looking at how it started. So we have a launch command, arguments run Scala launch, and then we have some like set breakpoints. There's none. you get the idea kind of. It's a bunch of back and forth between the debuggy and the debugger in this situation. So yeah, there's a lot of moving pieces with it behind the scenes. Exit out of there. Exit out of there. All right. Any other DApp questions or NeoVim-metals questions, or else we can actually jump into the Cat's Effect repo. Oh yeah, let's try debug. You're too late, man. Yeah, let's try that really quick. So hello. Nope. Boom. Again, I have toggle. No, what the hell is it called again? Debug toggle breakpoints. Okay, this should work. Open up my DApp REPL. Run. Okay, so now I can't tell. I think it's completed, which is super weird because there's no active debug session. Let's see what we're doing wrong. So again, so like look at what I have set up for this. I have these are my DApp related. Let me make this a little larger. These are my DApp related mappings. I have continue, which is just DC, the REPL toggle, DR, toggle breakpoints, step over, and step into. These are like the ones that I was using somewhat. But maybe they changed or something. So let's try to figure this out. So again, this should work. Doesn't stop at the breakpoints, just goes right through. So let's do a DApp breakpoint maybe or something. Set breakpoint. Toggle breakpoints. Creates or removes a breakpoint at the current line. Optional condition must be met for the debugger to stop at the breakpoints. Huh. Well, here they can try. Let's try to debug this in terms of maybe trailing the DApp communication to see if it's actually being set, like the breakpoints, because we should see this, right? So like let's close this actually, go back to hello, do a leader debug debug toggle breakpoints, debug REPL, run. Once it finishes. Okay. So let's take a look through here. Set breakpoints. Print up wows, all the debugging you need. Oh, come on, come on. Actually, all the debugging you really need is right there. That's it. That's honestly, this is my debugging like 90% of the times, because pretty print is awesome. So we have this set breakpoint command that is being requested. Let's maybe try to add a couple more things in here. So like bum. Up breakpoint 2. Up wow. 3. Up wow 2. That's enough. Let's do toggle breakpoint here. Debug toggle breakpoint. Debug toggle breakpoints. Stand by for NeoVim pretty print to hit your config soon. Dude, actually, there'd be a pretty neat way. Yeah, I don't know. Don't give me ideas. Don't give me those ideas. Actually, to be really honest, secretly, I've been trying to play around with a NeoVim Coursier plugin, which would like be like a wrapper around like some of your most common like CS commands, all within NeoVim, to show you like dependency conflicts, resolution, like dependency resolutions, completions, and stuff like that. Be on the lookout for that. There's like a better chance that that's going to hit. Okay, so run. Yeah, it doesn't break at any of these. Sounds lust. Coursier is excellent. Yeah, man, Coursier is great. Literally, they're like one of my most like used Scala tools is Coursier. There's got to be a different way to set that. I'm totally missing something, because I was assuming that setting these breakpoints like should work. Like, and this used to work. Like, I'm not lying. This used to work. DApp breakpoints. Right, let's actually set breakpoints. Same as toggle breakpoint, but is guaranteed to overwrite the previous breakpoints. Yeah, I don't know what I'm missing. Yeah, we can try to list them, see what's going on. We can do, I think, a Lua require DAP. What is it? List breakpoints. List breakpoints. Lua, okay. Print. Require DAP. List break. I don't know if I'm doing this right. Nope. Well, here, let's just do this. List breakpoints. Debug list breakpoints. If this works, I trust you, and you set multiple breakpoints to different files. How does stepping through look like? Well, I would be able to show you what it looks like if it was freaking working. Debug toggle breakpoint. Whoops. Yeah, it's pretty smooth actually, because like it's actually like an interactive REPL, so like you can jump into it, do like a dot into and stuff like that. It works quite nice. There's also extra plugins on top of this. Like I don't use a lot of extra stuff, but there's also like NeoVim DAP virtual text, which will show you at each point with virtual text what the values are. Let me see you actually. NeoVim DAP virtual text. This is kind of a cool plugin too. Whoops. So like, yeah, when you're stepping through, you can actually see the values via virtual text. So this is pretty cool. But before we can play around with that, so metals isn't the one rendering the values. At this point, literally, NeoVim-metals is grabbing the port from metals and the necessary information to give to the debuggy, which is NeoVim DAP. Then NeoVim DAP is in charge of displaying the values given. Debug list. What did I already forgot what we set this as? Leader DLB, leader DLB. Whoops. So leader DLB. Damn it. Nope. Leader DLB. I don't think my mapping's working. What am I doing wrong? Leader triple B. Leader debug toggle. Bum, 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 bum. Leader DDD. Huh, it doesn't list anything, so it should be leader DDD right now. And I'm not seeing anything. Oops. Huh. List breakpoints. Where does it list them though? That's maybe that's a good question. Oh, in the quick fix window. Huh, but it's not leaded. It's not like even working. Huh. Yeah, man, I don't know what's going on. Just make sure I don't have something like out of date or anything. Nope. No idea. This toggle breakpoint thing is eluding me a little bit here. Here, maybe let's look at some of these examples. Yeah, I don't really know. I'll have to like spend some time looking at this a little bit more, because this was working pretty fine for me the last time I tried this. But yeah, now it seems to like not be correctly toggling them for whatever reason. Well, it looks like it's toggling them, but it's not breaking on them or stopping on them. So yeah, I don't know, to be continued. Maybe I'll try to like figure this out, put some more effort into that, and then we will maybe we'll do like a DAP focused stream one day, and we'll just like really do a deep dive into like how to use NeoVim DAP with NeoVim-metals, how to do all this stuff. So it looks like at the end of the day, Old Faithful is just coming in for the win. But yeah, let's actually try the issue you were talking about Cat's Effect, and seeing like why that maybe isn't working as well. On the 3x branch or the 2x branch, or does it not matter? Don't matter. All right. This is probably going to take a second to load up. So while it's doing that, I'm going to put on a BRB message and grab another glass of water and use the restroom real quick. And then when I get back, we can dive into this if you still have time. So I'll be back in a couple of minutes. Hello, I'm back. All right. So let me look back at like what the actual file was that we were having issues with that wouldn't work. You mentioned. Which file was it that you couldn't jump to? Scala. All right. io.scala. Oh, duh, right there. Boom. Okay, let it compile real quick. So this is the one in JVM, right? Compiling. So it's being open and honest here. Like I have never like actually programmed much with cats, so I might feel like a noob as I'm stepping through some of this stuff. So I might need a little guidance. But yeah, that'd be a fun series. Chris learns cats. A stream. All right, so try to give me like an example of what you're trying to navigate to or like where you're trying to navigate it from, and like let's see what happens, because this is in, just to get an idea, cats effect. Oh, so we were in shared, core, shared, IO platform, middle of the page right now. Okay, I'll go back then. Okay, so IO platform. Okay, so I'm on IO platform. You want me to jump to what? Actually, it's got to finish compiling. Yeah, that worked. So that doesn't work, you were mentioning before, like in IntelliJ when you try, or? Oh, so I jumped to JS. Ah, okay. Ah, gotcha. So I'm in core and I jumped to the JS IO platform. But I'm assuming then there's an IO platform in this package as well, yeah? Actually, no. How does this work? So I'm in core and you're jumping to IO platform from which one? So sealed abstract class IO. So I am in, where am I again too? So this is in core, extends IO platform. It's a hard problem because you pretty much have two scopes. Yeah, I don't know how this is supposed to work, to be honest. Yeah, because I guess like how do I know what one I'm trying to jump to, right? Like, is it like how would you know? Like, how would your editor know? Like, am I trying to jump to the JVM one or am I trying to jump to the JS one? So you would want the user to scope. Huh. That's a good question. What if there's... I mean, one way you could do this is like I just did right here and pick which one you want to do and go to like, oh, okay, so I want to go to the JS one or JVM one. At least that's one way to get around it a little bit, so then you're not like just automatically jumping to some random one. Like, that's probably what I would do. Like, I wouldn't even use to go to definition. I would use to go to references. And then there's only 4 here, so every time I know, like, I can choose the JS one or the JVM one. Will be very confusing too. Find usages. Ah, that's true. Let's actually see what that shows. Actually, let's go back to core. Find, go to references. Oh, actually, what I could, I also go to implementate, like find implementations of one was probably going to be super confusing too. So like, let's go to the JVM one, for example. JVM IO platform. And then if I go to implementations. No, is that what I want to actually do? So none of these are in core though, right? No, these are all in core. So I wonder if the go-to implementations when you're in the JVM one, sorry, and when you're in the JS one will if they'll be identical. Like, how many are there here, for example? There's 25. So it finds 25 references of this here. So 25 references from IO platform and JVM. So let's go to IO platform and JS and do the same thing. Let's try to find all the references. Oh, sorry, the implementations rather. Yeah, it returns the same 25. So if you're coming from it from that perspective, from the either the JS package or the JVM package, it finds everyone in core. That's nice. Maybe. I thought that GD should also show quick fix. No, the GD will go to the there's actually multiple things going on with metals, and I always like forget a little bit. Like if we go to a definition, we also find references of that thing. Because like if you are already on the definition site, then we'll give you the references of that thing. So it's sort of like a fallback. But if you do a go-to definition, it's not going to open the quick fix window if it knows exactly, actually, if you're not on the definition site, it will then bring you to the definition site directly. There's no need to open the quick fix in that scenario because it knows where the definition site is. This one is done with cross projects, so theoretically they're in two different projects in Bloop config and scoped sources, but I don't know if LSP can surface that information. Like configuration wise, right? There are two different configurations is what you mean? Because I'm assuming there's JS, JVM. Yep, yeah, okay. I don't know, to be honest. This is I don't think this is like an exact situation, but there's actually a PR. Excuse me. There's actually a PR open right now on metals that changes some of the behavior. It won't. What this situation reminds me a little bit of is no. I think it will. This will help. Hold on a second. Yes, I think. So I don't know if this is the exact situation or not, but let me read this, because one issue we've had before is when there's the same symbol in multiple packages, sometimes it gets confused, right? So like here's an issue, like we have two modules, A and B. Create class example first in A and B. Find references on A, and you'll see references for both modules. So yeah, maybe this is a little bit different. It's not probably the same, because there is a PR that will like fine grain this. And now we differentiate between, like we have more information captured with the symbols to know like what build target they came from. This will really also help for like exactly what we were talking about when you have a project that has maybe multiple different build targets that are on different Scala versions, and they're using the same dependency with different versions. And sometimes, like if you're using, for example, PrettyPrint, and you had one package that was using PrettyPrint 2.12 at a certain version, and you would go to jump to a definition at the external source of PrettyPrint, it would open it in the metals read-only file for 2.12, and then you could jump to another build target that's on 2.13, go to definition again, and you might end up seeing the 2.12 source for your dependency source. But that will no longer happen once this PR gets merged, because everything will be sort of in its own place, and so like those would be on two different paths. It's worse in IntelliJ. Yeah, that's a. I mean, honestly, like tooling support for cross-built projects and especially cross-platform projects just like isn't great. Like it's a hard problem. Like the build matrix that you can have between like different platforms and different versions is just like insane sometimes. So yeah, yep. So that's all I gotta say. Yeah, I miss the good old days, the 2.11 JVM only days. Yep. But yeah, the cell idea is interesting. But I wonder, like, let's say hypothetically you had this cell idea working, right? And you chose JS. Then when you just jump into the JVM, does it just auto detect you're in JVM, or like what, like will anything from navigating into the JVM package not work anymore unless you tell it to that you want the JVM then? Like I'm trying to think, like picture in my head going from like core to JVM. Like if everything is defaulted, like the default cell is JS, then you would jump to the JS package, right? And you just can't navigate the JVM files. you could fake it and do like the excluded packages and exclude the JS package of your own project, I guess. Then you would, I think it would remove it from certain things. That's a pretty hacky way to do it, but I have a worse example. In a project I maintain, a cell is platform plus Scala version plus cat's effect version. A lot of suffering. My naive question is, I don't even know how that works. Like, does the build matrix allow you to say like I have a custom matrix component, which is the cat's effect version? Oh yeah, that's what I figured. SPT project matrix. Okay, I actually didn't even know that you could like create your own matrix, because I sort of just assumed it was like Scala version and build to like a platform. That's pretty crazy that I can actually do that. And in that project that you're maintaining that has that, like, is it insane to navigate around, or does it actually like allow you to navigate around pretty correctly? 94 artifacts. I hope it's a large project. 4D's where it's at. Yeah, man. Weaver test. Disney streaming. Scala fix. Ugh, I hate looking at repos on GitHub. Yeah, I'm curious to see what this thing looks like. I mean, you use metals, so like, does metals have a hard time with this at all, or does it like make sense of everything? Yeah, I'm curious what metals, like what the doctor even shows for all the build targets for these. Yeah, where do you define the matrix, like, or was that literally the matrix right there? Weaver plugin, no Scala. Oh, cat's effect 2-axis. Cat's effect 3-axis. It will burn your eyes. Oh boy. Oh wow. So if, oh yeah, I suppose even like running Scala fix on a project like this would probably be a pain, because you have to make sure everything is correct as well. Do you just disable it for certain things when you, or actually suppose you never mind, silly question, you don't even need it on the other ones, never mind. Scala format. So just to make sure I'm understanding this right, you're enabling Scala fix and Scala format on 2.13 because that's like the default version the project is built in. So then when you hit the other ones, there's no need to have them, right? Is that why you're turning them off here? Yeah, okay. I don't know why, but this reminds me. And then. Wow, this is impressive, man. And nothing's complete without a little regex, so like you even got that going for it. Wow, it's still running the bloop install. I also wonder, is there any custom configurations in this or no? One thing too that like throws people, Metals users, for a loop, I think, is like when they're using custom configurations and like by default bloop doesn't export the custom configuration, so you either need to like put like some bloop specific logic in your build definition, or you just need to use SPT as a BSP server. That like through we ended up having like multiple people in the same week have that issue, which is kind of interesting. We barely hit on it ever before that. Still importing. We don't. Both maintainers are Metals users, so we do everything through projects with built-in configs. Nice. Yep. Yeah, I always we actually had it the other day as well when we were doing Gatlin tests at work, and the PR came in, and I looked at it and I was like, oh no, don't create a custom configuration for Gatling tests, like it's gonna screw me over with bloop. And then they changed it happily, which was nice of them. Good colleagues. Still installing here. I mean, normally I feel like this would be done already, but it's also streaming takes like way more juice than I assumed. I'm also like streaming at a higher rate today than normal. Like I've like recently, like, I had issues with 1080 when I first started, so I've been switching down to 720. But I really wanted to like capture a lot of the Vim stuff earlier, so I can like show people later on. I'm curious if you guys saw any issues with it, or if there was any glitches or anything. Oh my gosh, this is still going. What is going on? Nice. Oh, there we go. So now we connected. Now we're in business. Root test, cats test, cats. Well, this isn't so bad. Oh, you published for RC2 even. Oh, jeez. Look at this. Look how great this is. Wow. I'm not gonna lie. So Metals Doctor is 1,700 lines long. Gosh. Bloop projects. Woof. I mean, real talk, like how big of a hassle is maintaining this? Like, is it difficult to do this, or is it sort of just like, it is what it is? It's not difficult. I would like to add it to Metals community build for performance testing. We actually don't have a community build for Metals. Might be a decent idea. Because yeah, we don't have a community build. We also, like, one thing we haven't been doing much of lately that I know they did in the beginning, like Oliver used to do this a lot, was like a lot of performance testing, where we haven't been doing it as much, where we probably should have like some more like stable benchmarks set up to make sure that we're not introducing regressions and stuff, because it's definitely happened before. Yeah, this is this project is pretty crazy to, like, this is definitely one of the crazier ones that I saw. So any other Vim questions? Don't compile it locally if you value your RAM. Nope, I won't. If not, I actually have like a couple Metals PRs to review. I might just review them right away on here, because I've got a free day today at home this Saturday. My wife is gone for the day, so I'm just here. So let's do this. If you have any questions at all about Vim related Metals things, don't hesitate, but I'm gonna, I think, review a couple PRs here. Oh, actually, this is a bug we found the other day on stream, and it's fixed now, so we can double check that, I believe. So yeah, this was actually in the metals code base as well. So what file was it, I believe? Yeah, no problem. Thanks a lot for hanging out. Appreciate it. Make sure to check Discord before you end the stream. I will definitely do that. Oh, nice. Yeah, for sure. If you guys are unaware, Agile Steel is Devin Sideu, who makes some great videos. And on May 9th, there's going to be a release of the video. This is unlisted. Sorry, I'm reading here. Give me a sec. Yeah, for sure. Here's an unlisted video. Agile, are you okay if I like share this in chat? Because people might like see it in chat later on then as well. So before I share this, are you cool with it? All right, cool with it. So check this out. This is a metals troubleshooting video, which yeah, I haven't watched yet. So I'm not saying it's amazing, but it's about metals, so it must be pretty cool. I'm new to NeoVim-metals. I'm trying to emulate what I had using coc-metals, and I wonder if you know a resource about migrating. What are you trying to emulate exactly? Like, what are you having issues emulating SPO147? Because we can literally look into it right now. Do I have a resource about migrating? I would say the last 3 hours is maybe a resource. I don't necessarily have like a specific resource probably for you, but what I would say is that if you are looking for like the smooth experience that you have with coc-metals with NeoVim-metals, it's important to use a couple extra plugins to give you that smooth experience. The ones that I have listed here are going to, in my opinion, do that for you. Like NeoVim Comp will give you the same type of completion that you're going to have with coc-metals, like with snippet support and everything. Telescore is a little bit extra. It's not, we probably don't, there's nothing necessarily in, well, I shouldn't say that. If you want to use like Telescope for find references and all that, it's going to be similar and give you like a fuzzy finder search over your references and stuff the same way coc-metals will. LSP Saga is going to give you like code actions and hover and those types of things that are going to be very similar to how coc-metals did. And same, yeah. So it depends what you're looking for exactly. Yeah, that's a good way to do it too. I recommend that. Like just make the switch, figure out like what you don't like, and then slowly start to fix it and to go over it and find things that, like, find what really bugs you and then try to find like a good solution to fix it. Yeah, Velvet Belbedememe. That is a good question, and there are ways to do it. There's ways to, yeah, there's different ways to do it. And it depends if you're trying to load an entire file, if you're trying to load a function. Let me show you a trick that Tej showed on stream one time, TJ Telescopic Johnson, which like blew my mind when he showed this on stream. So something I do sometimes is I want some functions that I'm playing around with, right? And this is like one I just used the other day, like toggle nums I was trying to do. Like I've stopped using nums basically, but I wanted a way to like toggle these really easily. But let's say you're trying to change a function like this, literally like while you're editing something, and you don't want to keep closing, reopening, which gets kind of annoying. So you can do this. So I have this function called reload in my global, I call it. So if I look up here, I import global, playground globals. And if I go to globals, I have this reload function here, okay, which is just a function that takes something in and it does a loaded to nil, which literally tells Lua to unload this package, and then I require it again. So it's literally like it reloads it. And what this does is now when I call this this mapping, it reloads it. Like, so every time I say toggle nums, what it's really doing is unloading the settings functions, reloading them up, and then calling the function. But it's like fast enough to do that. And let me show you like how this works then. So let's go back into functions, and let's open up, I don't know, just doesn't even matter. Just open up this vimrc file maybe. Whoops. So I have this set to, toggle, right? But let's say I wanted to do more than that. I wanted to also echo something out, right? So like, I don't know what the value of number is. So like maybe let's echo that out, right? So vim about number, okay? So like, keep in mind, like I didn't close anything. All I did is change the function. And now you see at the bottom, it's echoing it out. So like, I don't need to close anything if I use this type of stuff. And I've seen this be done for entire files. So like if I look back at my init, actually let's get rid of this. So like there, I remove it and I can jump back over here and it's no longer doing it. So if I jump back to init, you see where I like sometimes will call this entire like setup thing. I can do the same thing here. Like I could, instead of just calling require here, or like require sections settings functions, I could also do like a reload whatever and just reload the entire thing every time. I'll try to find the stream. Actually, I know what stream it is. Let me post it in here because it's like this stream is amazing. Tej. Actually don't remember. Yeah, it's pretty cool, isn't it? So a while ago he did a stream with some source graph related things, and he posted it here and I just want to find it. Maybe. Come on. This one. This guy. This is like such a great video. Like there's so much in here. So here, spend some time, watch that. I think that will answer, whoops. RE, awesome. That's not what I was trying to do at all. Yep, source graph is also where Olafur is now. So yeah, that video will give you like a really good idea to do it, because I also like need to implement that more in my workflow, and I haven't, because especially for NeoVim-metals, like I've noticed I haven't been working it very much or using that very much, because I actually like need to shut it down because I need to reattach metals and I need it to restart. Because one thing I find myself doing a lot is like if I'm working on metals, I'll do a publish local, I'll publish a new version of metals, and then I'll do a metals install, which will pick up that new version of metals. But then I don't think, here, I'll just show you because I was just about to do this anyway. So like, let's say going into metals and I want to test out this PR that I was just looking at a little bit ago. So like, let's go here. PR, what number is this? I'll show you what I want to do and maybe we'll figure out how to do it. So let's check this out. So let's jump to, whoops. Let's jump to a tester here and let's open this up. So actually, before I do that, let's go change this, get rid of this. metals server version. I want the snapshot, so let's do this. All right, so if I open this up and I do a metals install, this will install the latest snapshot that I have locally, right? And now if I go over here and I do an SPT publish local, I'll publish a new version of metals and I'll want to install this, right? And since I'm already on snapshots, I can do a metals install and it will indeed bootstrap a new version of metals for me, but it won't actually, I don't know. I actually have never really checked. So I don't think if I do like a metals restart, I don't know if it fully loses reference to that metals and will load up the new metals that I just created, or if it will keep reference to it or not. So we'll try to figure that out. And the bug that we are trying to fix is this, because it's literally, it was something in the metals code base, if I remember correctly. Inferred type. Yeah, so insert inferred type.scala. So let's jump there. Insert inferred type. And it was when I was trying to insert the type on val code action. Okay. So right down here. So the old behavior is that when I try to insert the type here, it won't actually take into account and that the import was renamed here. So I would expect this to give me L code action as the inferred type, but instead it'll give me LSP 4J code action, right? So insert, boom. Oh wow, that's not at all what I was expecting. It gave me code action. Why did it give me code action? I wonder if it was because it wasn't fully compiled or what was going on, but that shouldn't have, definitely shouldn't have happened, because that, yeah, will cause a compilation issue. Maybe wait until it finishes compiling and we'll try again. Because yeah, when we reported this, it gave me LSP4J code action right here. There, so this is what I was expecting. So it must have been an issue with like not being compiled. So this is what we didn't want, right? LSP4S code action. So I want to try the new version of this. So I just published a new version here on the left-hand side, right? So we see that this is published. So I should be able to then do a metals install, which will use Corsair to bootstrap a new version of metals. Okay, that's done, right? Good. But the thing is, now I need to like detach metals and reattach. And I don't think that, it's not currently doable, I believe, because there is a like, I thought there was a restart server, metals. It's a build. I wonder if there is a, I'm like going crazy here. I don't even know if there's a restart server. Metals restart server. But that's in the VS Code. I don't know if that's actually AG restart. Oh no, so metals restart server. So this looks like actually something we just don't have in NeoVim-metals. What? Who forgot to add this? Because realistically, this should be restart. We have a build restart, but no restart server. So let's actually double check that this is, we're taking the long way around. So metals, language, server, restart. Restart build server, restart presentation compiler. Actually, what is that sending in then? VS Code. Build restart. Restart server. Yeah, build restart is Bloop, but this seems to be something different. Like this seems to be a different it's weird because it says that it's sending in a restart metals restart server, but I have no idea. Unless it's handled by itself. Disconnect from the build server without restarting. Actually, let's just look into server commands build restarts. Okay, so maybe it's build restart. Build restart. Actually, let's just do this. Server commands. Yeah, so this is the Bloop. So I think, honestly, I think this is just like an abstraction layer that they have multiple ways you can do a build restart, because you could literally do a restart server, which is, so this one, Metals restart server is restart server, but then we handle restart server in here, and the restart server function just seems to call build restart, which is really just build restart. So I don't think there is a way to just restart Metals necessarily. So then the next question goes to that, like, maybe there's a way to like unattach like the LSP client and the NeoVim side, because if you look at like how we're set up here, like the attach method, there must be like a disattach or something. This is LSP buff attach. LSP, what if there's a buff detach? Oops. Buff. Maybe there is a detach. Buff notify. Yeah, I don't think so. It doesn't look like there's a disattach. But I wonder if we could tie into like maybe the way that, that it's set to exit or something. On attach. Yeah, there might be a way to tie into that, I think. Because this is all the unattached stuff, or this is all like the buff attach client, I believe. Oh no, start client actually. Huh, yeah, you could do that, I guess. Shut down. Buff request. I think we could just do a buff request sync shutdown. Sends a request to the server and waits for the response. I mean, it might be a little bit hacky, but that could work. Maybe let's look at whoops. I'm trying to see if there's like anything exposed that we could use. Maybe it also kills the metals process, but that's what we want, right? Like we want it to kill the metals process and then shut down the connection and then restart with the new metals one that we just created. Client stop. Maybe we could just do this. Because we have clients here. Where's the client ID? So clients, if clients, and yeah, so client ID here. I'm pretty sure we could try that. I mean, this might be a super hacky way to do it, but LSP client stop. Here, let's try this. So let's go into, oh no, I'm gonna need to like reach into setup. That's okay. Okay. So we'll go into Lua. We'll just create some like placeholder function for now and just be like shut down. And this is a function. This function doesn't take anything for now. I think we already import setup. Yeah, okay. So setup, but do we expose the clients? Local clients, buffget clients. Actually, is there like a built-in way in LSP to do this? Like a built-in way for the, yeah, this thing. LSP restart. That's what I was thinking. So the LSP config for like that we don't use actually, I think may have this. In the source you showed, it also kills the process with signal 15. So it seems like the right function to do what VS Code can. Ah, okay. Maybe I should have like looked a little bit closer inside of what VS Code was doing. Whoops. Apparently I need to fix that before I move on. Hold on. Nope. Here. This should be fine. Extension. What was it? Stop server? Or no? Restart. Metals restart server. It's handled in Metals language client. Ah, okay. So restart server. Let's jump into there then. Gracefully terminate. Ah, so that's exactly what they do then. They send a shutdown request. Yeah, we can totally mimic this. Sorry, I totally missed it. We were doing this. Exec kill. Yeah, that's probably a last case scenario, I'm assuming. Okay, okay. So yeah, this will work, I think. Send request, then what else are we starting? Okay, okay, cool. So it's shut down. We need to get the clients. So let's do the same thing actually. We don't even need, I think, to reach into setup. We can do this. Where's buff coming from? Actually, let's just take this entire chunk. Okay, so for buff in pairs, vim function get buff info, buff loaded true. If NeoVim buff get option file type is Scala, then local clients for clients. Client config name equals. Yeah, so this is a little bit, actually no, I think we can maybe reach into here and get the name as well. Actually, yeah, for now, we're just going to cheat a little bit and use this constant, I think. Actually, no, screw it. Just because we have no idea if this is going to work or not. We're literally just going to do metals. Hey, glass of ethanol, thanks for following. So if client and client pairs is metals, then we're going to do LSP buff clients. No, we're going to do LSP clients. What was this thing actually? Client stop. function client stop. Client stop. And the client ID is probably force it to true. Get rid of this, get rid of that. Alright, I feel like this is pretty hacky, but let's give this a go. Let's actually not try it on metals itself yet. Whoops. Jump tester. Alright, we're gonna tail the LSP logs as well, just so we can like make sure that we can see if like a request is actually being sent or not. I didn't map it to anything yet. That's okay. We can just do it this way. Metals shut down. This should work as well. All right, so like let's let it finish up so we can see the logs, and then we'll just trigger this and see what happens. I don't know if it worked actually. Nope. Okay, let's go back. Just because I also don't even know if it's being triggered or not, so let's try to just make sure this is being called. Print hi. I want to map it to something too, just to make it a little bit easier. So let's go to our mappings. Actually, no. Like, make it even easier on ourselves. Let's go to this. Let's do a metals restarts. Lua require metals. What was it called? Shutdown. Require metals shut down. Okay. Let's jump back over here. See, like that was a perfect situation right there where like I wish I wouldn't have had to shut down and restart, and maybe if I would have had a mapping that was calling reload on this function, I could have done that without actually having to do that, but yeah. So now we should see that new command here. Yeah, metals restart. And let's see what it does. I see a high. It's not exactly what we were looking for. Yeah, it doesn't look to have worked. So let's do a couple things here. For like a little bit easier debugging, we will add in a mapping for this. And we'll just say leader Q to quit. And then we'll require, let's delete all this. Require metals. Why do I keep forgetting what the stupid method is called? Shut down. It should shut down. Except for require, we'll do reload, which will then cause metals to reload every time we call one of these functions, which should work then, right? So I don't have to keep closing and opening and closing and opening and stuff. So let's then go to where we have NeoVim-metals, which is right here. So let's get rid of that. Let's go to metals.lua. So we have to make sure we're actually getting a client here, I guess. So for client and pairs client, do, I don't know, just do like a print client's name. See if that works, and jump back over here. Let this load up. All right, try a leader queue. Whoops, maybe if I did the mapping right. right, here we go. All right, so I see the high, but that's all we're seeing. Which makes me think that, let's do buff number just to see if this is getting loaded. Actually, no. Oops. Nice. So like now you see what I was talking about a little bit before. We're seeing more information here, and I never had to like shut down. Like I could just, it's automatically like it unloaded it, reloaded it, then called the function again, which is pretty cool. So I'm giving a 1 here, but what is the 1 coming from? It's a good question. So I think buff number is probably, actually, maybe I should. Oops. Yeah, so 1 is the buff number that I'm currently in. So we know buff number is 1. Ah. So funny. This actually is a bug that I never caught before in setup, which was where I'm at. This check shouldn't just be for Scala. I'm in an SPT file, which isn't always going to be known as Scala, depending on your settings. So this should really be API NeoVim buff get option file type equals Scala or buff equals SPT. So for now, like here, let me add a to-do in here. Oops, not in Scala anymore. To-do, this should probably check for SPT files as well. But let's jump back over here and we'll actually jump into a Scala file. Maybe this was working the entire time, and yeah, that was just... Okay, I don't want all that garbage. That's the entire client that we just spit out, so... So I know that that is working. Yup. Huh, okay, so... It does try to call it, it seems. Error executing NeoVim-metals. Attempt to index field client a function value. What am I passing in here? So client is a function value. That doesn't make a ton of sense. So we have for every client and pairs clients do, if client config name is metals, then prints yup, and then LSP client. Ah, okay, so LSP. I think I'm probably just trying to access something that doesn't exist probably. So let's actually go back to NeoVim and figure out like how to actually call this. It's private. So let's, what is clients here? Maybe I can just call stop on client directly inside of here. So I can just do client stop. True. This might be better. Whoops. So let's jump back into example. Yep. Yeah, but it doesn't seem to have done anything actually. Or it did, and it's just like no longer connected anymore. Ah, maybe it did work because I don't see anything in the logs anymore. But then there needs to probably be a way to reconnect. Yeah, so I'm not connected anymore. Yeah, so I'm not connected. So that worked. That's the way to disconnect. there's a stop client on LSP itself, maybe? Like, do you mean like part of the LSP spec, or what do you mean? Or do you mean like what I just did on the actual client? Yeah, well, this actually works. So stop client. Ah, there is an LSP stop client. Client ID and force. Isn't this what I just tried though? Oh no, it's not, I guess. I wonder what the difference between calling stop on a client directly or LSP client stop. Like, what's the difference? nvim LSP stop client, client ID, force is true. Actually, let's just comment this out for now. Get rid of this. Whoops. All right, so let's try this now. See if this does the same exact thing. Well, we're not even attached anymore, so. Yeah, interesting. So actually, how does that even work? Yeah, so we'll need like another way to, I guess, like set up and attach then. So yeah, we'll figure that out in a little bit. So let's jump to main. Alrighty. Okay, so leader Q will quit for us. Yep. Client 1 quit with exit code 143 and signal 0. Can I connect back maybe now? Yeah, so that works as well. It does show a message, which maybe isn't as nice, but it does the trick. I'm going to assume that like under the hood, it just does the same thing. Stop clients. Rip Pepino, thanks for the follow. How are you doing today? I hope good. Stops a client. You can also use a stop function. Oh, okay, so this is literally saying the same exact thing. You can also use the stop function on a Vim LSP client object to stop all clients. Is there an LSP restart maybe? That'd have been dope. That's all right. So, okay, so let's take a look at what stop actually returns. Enjoying the weekend. How are you? I am doing pretty well. Today, it's a pretty dreary day here in the Netherlands, but all in all, it's a good day so far. I feel like we covered a ton of stuff today. We did all sorts of info on coc-metals, NeoVim-metals, and now we are trying to fix well, it's not really a bug. We're just trying to figure out a way to automatically shut down and restart, so then when we're like trying to make changes to metals, the language server, we don't have to like shut down the actual project. We can just like trigger a shutdown where we can like rebootstrap a new metals, and then once that exists, shut down the server, restart the server, and never have to close your project. So yep. Yes, I'm not exactly sure what this is actually returning. Force RPC. I don't think it returns anything actually. Oh no, yeah, it must just a 0 or 1. Okay, so let's actually go back to, so we know the shutdown is working. Let's look maybe at how we can then reattach. We could probably reattach pretty similarly by just like grabbing whatever the setup function is, or like whatever the setup table is, and then pass it in and call the same method that we call to get started in the first place. So this initialize or attached function, we might actually be able to use this. The only tricky thing is, yeah, Velveteen. Thanks a lot for coming and hanging out. It was fun. I'm glad you learned a ton. Don't ever hesitate to ask more questions, and hopefully see you around again. So I think we can directly just do this, but the tricky part is that we're reliant on this config to be passed in, which we don't cache at all. So we might want to change this around a little bit so that we can call, like when this is first called, we cache the config. After the config is cached, whenever we're triggering like a shutdown, we then have access to it and we can restart it that way. So for now, let's just try this. So we'll do this jazz, we'll loop over everything, we'll shut it down. And then after we shut it down, we'll call setup, initialize, or attach. One other thing we can do here is after we confirm that this config is actually legit, let's do a, yeah, let's just do, for now, we'll do an mconfig, and this is nil. And when it first comes in, we'll then just do config equals config, and then over here we should be able to just do setup config. In theory, this then should, this is like pretty hacky, but should do the job for at least testing this. So let's close this down, jump into main. And I love how derailed we got from just like reviewing the PR and then working on NeoVim-metals. All right, so with do queue, client quit, but then it doesn't look like we reconnected still. No, still not. Interesting. Okay. I would have expected that to work. Pretty sure we're getting here still. Vim LSP stop client. I don't think it makes any difference, but if we do this instead. I just want to make sure that we're like getting to the point where we're actually trying to reattach. Done. Yeah, it is. I think it just takes a little bit. So like it's still in the process of quitting when we try to reattach. Client 1 quit with exit code 143 and signal 0. So I think we should try to capture whatever is being returned here. So let's just do the result equals nil. Actually, want to know exactly what this looks like. Whoops. All right, we'll try this one more time. Oh, it's just nil. I suppose we should probably have to try to like await this or something. I don't know, I'll have to look more into this. But I think for the time being, I just want to finish reviewing that PR actually, and then stop getting sidetracked with this. And I'll look at it later, create an issue for it. So let's close this. Let's get rid of that. Let's close this. And let's actually jump back to metals. Finish what we started. So let's open this back up. make sure we have the latest snapshot that we just created installed, which I believe we do. And then we're going to jump to the inserts inferred type code action. Let this load up, and we will try to insert the inferred type on code action here, and hopefully we'll see the change that was made, and this will be L code action instead of LSP4J code action. And if so, it looks like it works. And then we'll look at the code real quick. After it's done indexing. All right, moment of truth. Still did it. Huh. I wouldn't have expected that. Alright, alright. Still seems to be doing it. Make insert, nope. Oh no, that is right in. Scala collection map, rename symbols, and then shorten names, lookup symbol, context lookup symbol name map is not stale. Oh, it's pretty simple actually. Where was the change made? Inferred type provider. Inferred type provider. Line 46. Huh, interesting. I'm not actually sure what's going on here. But it's starting to get a little bit darker, and I need to go for a walk, I think, before the end of the day, so I think I'm going to be calling it a day here for a second, or in a second. So I think I'll look at this later, because I don't know what's going on fully. But I had a ton of fun, so thanks for everybody coming in and hang out. Hopefully people learn some stuff. Hopefully people are wanting to, yeah, I don't know, jump into NeoVim maybe. Just for reference too, like if you want the slides that we looked at it all early on, you can find them here. There's some links to like all the different plugins that I mentioned and stuff like that. If you are a NeoVim-metals user, please don't hesitate to submit bugs and stuff if you find them, or things or ideas to like improve stuff. Yeah, the more people that want to improve stuff, the better it gets. So it's pretty self-explanatory. But yeah, let's find somebody to raid, and then let's call it a day, because it's been a pretty long time, fair amount of time, I think. What are we at right now? Almost 4 hours. So yeah, we've been here for a while. All right, anybody have any preference on who we raid, or let's take a peek. Actually, Arbaya is streaming right now, and I watched him for the first time last night, and it was pretty fun. So we'll raid him, and let me set that up. But yeah, it was again fun hanging out. Hope to see you back here, and have a good rest of your day.